The first bullet shattered the champagne tower at 9:47 p.m., and Emma Reyes knew two things instantly. She was going to die in this hotel, and the man pulling her behind the marble pillar was the most dangerous person she'd ever seen. 6 months pregnant, broke, and invisible. That's how Emma had survived. But when assassins stormed the Salvatore Grand, the hotel's mysterious owner decided she was worth saving. Now she's trapped in his armored SUV, racing through Manhattan while he makes calls that end careers with a single word. If you want to know how a maid became a mafia king's obsession, stay until the end. Hit that like button and comment your city so I can see how far this story travels. What? The thing about being invisible is that you see everything. Emma Reyes had perfected the art over 6 months of scrubbing toilets and changing Egyptian cotton sheets at the Salvatore Grand. Shoulders slightly hunched, eyes downcast, movements efficient, but never rushed. The wealthy didn't notice the help, and that suited her just fine. Notice meant questions. Questions meant they'd see the swell of her belly beneath the unflattering uniform, do the math, and decide she was a liability. She couldn't afford to be a liability, not when this job was all that stood between her and the street. Emma, the Cristal Suite needs a turn down, Patricia's voice crackled through the headset. VIP guest, white glove service. Copy that. Emma adjusted her cleaning cart, ignoring the persistent ache in her lower back. 6 months pregnant at 24, abandoned by a fiancé who'd vanished like smoke 3 months ago, and living in a fifth-floor walk-up in Queens that smelled perpetually of someone else's cooking. This was not how she'd imagined her life turning out. Marco had promised her everything. A house in the suburbs, a wedding in the spring, a life where she wouldn't have to choose between eating and keeping the electricity on. Instead, he'd left her with an engagement ring from a pawn shop, mounting debt, and a baby she was terrified she couldn't provide for. But Emma Reyes was nothing if not a survivor. The elevator chimed softly as she ascended to the penthouse level. The Cristal Suite occupied half of the 42nd floor, reserved for guests who considered $1,000 a night quaint. Emma had cleaned it a dozen times and never saw the same occupant twice. Oil barons, tech moguls, celebrities traveling incognito. They all blurred together into a parade of entitled excess. She knocked twice, waited the required 15 seconds, then used her master key. The suite was empty but recently occupied. A laptop sat open on the marble desk, its screen dark. 2 glasses of whiskey, one barely touched, sat on the coffee table. The air held the ghost of expensive cologne, something dark and complex that probably cost more than her monthly rent. Emma worked methodically, replacing towels, adjusting pillows, leaving chocolate truffles on the turned-down bed. She was folding a cashmere throw when voices echoed from the hallway. "Don't care what Kozlov thinks. The deal is off the table." The voice was male, American, and carried the kind of authority that expected obedience. "He won't accept that." A second voice, younger, nervous. "He's already in the city. Already made arrangements. Then he can make arrangements to leave. I don't negotiate with men who mistake my hospitality for weakness." The door opened. Emma's training kicked in instantly. She kept her eyes down, her movement steady as she placed the throw across the foot of the bed. Invisible. She was furniture, part of the scenery, beneath notice. "I'll handle Kozlov personally," the first voice continued. Footsteps crossed the suite, expensive shoes on marble, the whisper of a tailored suit. "Have Marcus move the meeting to the vault. If he wants to do business, he does it on my terms." "Yes, sir, Mr. Salvatore." Emma's hand stilled for just a fraction of a second. Dante Salvatore. She'd heard the name whispered by staff with a mixture of reverence and fear. The owner of the Salvatore Grand and half a dozen other properties across Manhattan. A man who'd built an empire from nothing by the age of 35, though the rumors about how he'd done it ranged from shrewd investing to something far darker. She'd never seen him. Men like Dante Salvatore didn't notice the maids. "Anything else?" the younger man asked. "Yes. Find out who leaked the Budapest information. I want a name by morning. And then? Then I'll decide if they're worth the cost of a funeral." The casual way he said it, like discussing a dinner reservation, sent ice down Emma's spine. She finished with the throw, collected her supplies, and turned toward the door, still not raising her eyes. "Wait." Emma froze. Her heart hammered against her ribs. Look at me. There was no defying that tone. Slowly, Emma lifted her gaze. Dante Salvatore stood 15 feet away, and the photographs she'd glimpsed in business magazines didn't do him justice. Tall, broad-shouldered, with the kind of presence that consumed oxygen. Dark hair swept back from a face that could have been carved from marble. Strong jaw, straight nose, lips that looked cruel even in repose. But it was his eyes that held her captive. Gray, like smoke over steel, and utterly merciless. He studied her with the focused intensity of a predator assessing prey. His gaze dropped to her belly, lingered there for a moment, then returned to her face. How far along? The question was so unexpected that Emma answered before thinking. 6 months. Working until when? As long as they'll let me. Something flickered in those gray eyes. She couldn't name it. What's your name? Emma Reyes, sir. Emma Reyes, he repeated, as if testing the weight of it. You're good at your job. Efficient. Quiet. It wasn't a question, so she didn't respond. Are you happy here, Emma Reyes? The question threw her. Happy? What did happiness have to do with survival? It's a good position, sir. That's not what I asked. I'm grateful for the work. Dante's mouth curved slightly, not quite a smile, but close. Diplomatic answer. He turned to the younger man. Give her a raise. 10%. And move her off evening shifts. Pregnant women shouldn't be on their feet until midnight. The younger man, Marcus, apparently, blinked. Sir, that's not standard. I don't recall asking if it was standard. Dante's voice didn't rise, but Marcus paled. Make it happen. Yes, sir. Emma's mind reeled. Mr. Salvatore, I can't. That's not necessary. I didn't ask if it was necessary. I run this hotel, Miss Reyes. When I see value, I compensate it. His eyes held hers, and she felt pinned, dissected, understood in a way that terrified her. Do you have family? Someone helping with the baby? No, sir. The father? Gone. Gone, Dante repeated softly. Interesting choice of words. Not passed away. Not separated. Gone. Emma said nothing. What could she say? That Marco had stolen from her, lied to her, and disappeared into the night 3 months ago? That she'd been so blind, so desperate to believe in their future, that she'd missed every warning sign? Well then, Dante straightened his cuffs, a gesture so casual it seemed choreographed. You'll work days, you'll take the raise, and if anyone gives you trouble about it, you'll report it directly to Marcus. Understood? Yes, sir. Thank you. Don't thank me, Miss Reyes. I don't do charity. I reward competence. He moved toward the door, then paused. And Emma? Next time you're in a room with men discussing business you shouldn't hear, you might want to appear more invisible. Heat flooded her face. I didn't hear anything. Of course you didn't. That almost smile again. But if you had, you'd be smart enough to forget it immediately, wouldn't you? Yes, sir. Good girl. Then he was gone, Marcus trailing in his wake, and Emma was alone in a suite that suddenly felt too large and too empty. Her hand shook as she gathered her cart. That encounter, brief, strange, unsettling, felt significant in a way she couldn't articulate, like standing on a fault line in the seconds before an earthquake. She shook off the feeling. Men like Dante Salvatore didn't change lives with a 10% raise and a shift adjustment. He'd forget her by tomorrow, and she'd go back to being invisible. That was the plan. The universe, it seemed, had other ideas. The hotel's annual charity gala was the kind of event Emma usually avoided. 500 of Manhattan's elite packed into the grand ballroom, dripping in diamonds and self-importance, while the staff moved through the crowd like ghosts. Emma had volunteered for coat check, a quiet, invisible position that kept her off the floor and away from the chaos. But Patricia had called in sick at the last minute, and Emma found herself in a server's uniform, balancing a tray of champagne flutes and navigating a sea of designer gowns. More champagne, a woman in red demanded, not looking at Emma's face. Of course, ma'am. Emma offered the tray. The ballroom glittered like the inside of a jewelry box. Crystal chandeliers cast prisms across the marble floor. A string quartet played something classical and expensive sounding. Emma caught glimpses of celebrities, politicians, people whose names appeared in gossip columns. They laughed too loud, drank too much, and treated the staff like exceptionally well-trained dogs. She'd been circulating for 20 minutes when she saw him. Dante Salvatore stood near the far windows, surrounded by a constellation of sycophants. He wore a tuxedo that probably cost more than a car, tailored to emphasize his powerful build. Even from across the ballroom, his presence was magnetic. People orbited him, seeking his attention, his approval, his favor. He looked bored. Their eyes met across the crowd, and Emma's breath caught. He was looking directly at her, not through her, not past her, but at her. Recognition flickered across his face, followed by something else. Surprise? Concern? Then his expression shuddered, and he turned back to the man speaking to him. Emma released a breath she hadn't known she was holding. Of course. He'd noticed her for half a second, remembered the pregnant maid, and dismissed her from his thoughts. That was the natural order of things. She was refilling her tray at the bar when the first shot rang out. For a split second, the ballroom froze. The champagne tower at the center of the room exploded in a cascade of glass and foam. Then someone screamed, and the world erupted into chaos. More gunshots. Rapid fire. Professional. Emma's tray crashed to the floor as bodies surged past her. She caught a glimpse of men in black tactical gear flooding through the ballroom entrances, weapons raised. Not police. Something worse. A woman fell beside her, clutching her arm, blood seeping between her fingers. The screaming intensified. Emma's instinct screamed at her to run, but her pregnant body was slow, unwieldy. She stumbled toward the service entrance, heart hammering, hands instinctively protective over her belly. Someone grabbed her from behind. Emma opened her mouth to scream, but a hand clamped over it. She was yanked backward with brutal efficiency, her back colliding with something solid and unyielding. "Don't move!" The voice was low, controlled, absolutely calm despite the gunfire echoing through the ballroom. "Don't make a sound." She knew that voice. Dante Salvatore pulled her behind a marble pillar as bullets chewed into the wall where she'd been standing seconds before. His arm locked around her waist, holding her against his chest with an intimacy that would have been shocking under any other circumstances. "How many?" he asked into a phone Emma hadn't seen him produce. "At least 6 in the ballroom, more at the exits." Marcus's voice crackled through. "Sir, you need to move. Now." "Working on it." Dante's grip on Emma tightened. "Emma, listen very carefully. In approximately 30 seconds, I'm going to move you toward the kitchen entrance. You're going to keep your head down and follow my exact instructions. Can you do that?" She nodded, too terrified to speak. "Good girl." His breath was warm against her ear. "On 3. 1 woot." An explosion rocked the far side of the ballroom. The chandeliers swayed, sending prisms of panicked light across the chaos. People were trampling each other trying to reach the exits. Emma caught glimpses of the tactical team moving with military precision, firing not randomly but at specific targets. This wasn't a robbery. This was an assassination. 2. A man in black appeared around the pillar, weapon raised. Dante moved faster than Emma thought possible, his hand flashing out to strike the man's throat. The tactical operative dropped like a puppet with cut strings. Dante caught the falling weapon with casual grace, checked the magazine, and aimed in one fluid motion. He fired twice. 2 bodies dropped across the ballroom. 3. They moved. An operative stepped into their path. Dante's hand locked on Emma's wrist, pulling her through the chaos with absolute certainty. He moved like he could see through walls, anticipating threats before they materialized. When an operative stepped into their path, Dante put him down without breaking stride. When debris fell from the ceiling, he shifted Emma behind him, shielding her with his body. The kitchen entrance appeared ahead, safety. Emma could see it, could almost feel it. A figure emerged from behind a serving cart, weapon aimed directly at Dante's head. Time crystallized. Emma saw the man's finger tighten on the trigger, saw Dante realize he couldn't move fast enough, couldn't get his weapon around in time, saw death approaching with mechanical inevitability. She didn't think. Her hand shot out, grabbing a champagne bottle from a fallen tray. She threw it with every ounce of desperate strength she possessed. The bottle struck the operative in the face. It wasn't enough to stop him, but it made him flinch, made his shot go wide. Dante used that half second, spinning and firing in the same motion. The operative crumpled. Dante stared at Emma for a frozen moment, something like shock in those steel gray eyes. Then his hand was on her back, propelling her forward into the kitchen. Move, move, move! They burst through the swinging doors into a stainless steel maze of prep stations and industrial ovens. Staff huddled in corners, some crying, others frozen in shock. Dante didn't slow down. He pulled Emma through the kitchen, through a loading area, and out into an underground parking structure. An armored SUV waited, engine running. Marcus stood beside it, weapon drawn, scanning for threats. Sir, get us out of here, now! Dante practically threw Emma into the back seat, climbing in after her. The sanctuary, full security protocol. The SUV lurched forward before Emma could process what was happening. She caught glimpses of police vehicles flooding toward the hotel, their sirens wailing in the distance. Then they were speeding through dark streets, leaving the chaos behind. Emma's hand shook uncontrollably. Adrenaline coursed through her veins, making her breath come in short gasps. She pressed a palm to her belly, feeling for movement, for reassurance that her baby was okay. Breathe, Dante commanded, not unkindly. Slow and steady. In through your nose, out through your mouth. She obeyed without thinking. Gradually, her breathing steadied. The shaking didn't stop, but it became manageable. I don't understand, she whispered. What just happened? Who were those men? People with poor judgment and worse timing. Dante was checking his phone, his fingers moving across the screen with rapid precision. Emma, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Has anyone approached you recently? Asked you questions about your work? About me? No, I don't. I'm just a maid. Nobody cares about me. Somebody cared enough to have you scheduled in that ballroom tonight. The words hit her like ice water. What? You were supposed to be in coat check. Instead, Patricia called in sick. Patricia, who hasn't missed a shift in 3 years, and you were moved to the floor, specifically assigned to my section of the ballroom. Dante's eyes found hers, and they were harder than diamonds. That's not a coincidence. You think someone... What? Used me? As what? As leverage, as a distraction, or as collateral damage. His jaw tightened. I noticed you immediately when you entered the ballroom, which means anyone watching me noticed you too. A pregnant employee I'd recently shown favoritism toward. That makes you interesting. That makes you useful. Emma's stomach twisted. I didn't do anything. I swear I didn't know. I know. The certainty in his voice was oddly comforting. You threw a bottle at an armed operative to save my life. That's not the behavior of someone complicit in an assassination attempt. He paused, though it was supremely stupid. You're welcome, Emma shot back before she could stop herself. Dante's mouth curved. A real smile this time, brief but genuine. Thank you, Emma Reyes. You have terrible survival instincts, but I'm grateful for them. They drove in silence for several minutes. Emma watched the city slide past through bulletproof glass, her mind struggling to process the last 30 minutes. This morning, she'd been invisible. Now she was in the back of an armored SUV with a man who'd just killed 3 people without breaking a sweat, fleeing an assassination attempt, and apparently being used as a pawn in someone's twisted game. Where are we going? She asked finally. Somewhere safe. I have an apartment. I need to... Your apartment is compromised. Anyone who knows enough to manipulate your work schedule knows where you live. Dante didn't look up from his phone. You're coming with me until I determine the scope of this situation and neutralize the threat. You can't just kidnap me. Now he did look at her, and his expression was patient in the way a wolf might be patient with a rabbit. Emma, 20 minutes ago, armed operatives stormed my hotel with military-grade weapons and tactical precision. They didn't rob anyone. They didn't take hostages. They came specifically to kill me, and they were willing to slaughter anyone in their path to do it. You were in that ballroom because someone put you there, which means you're connected to this whether you like it or not. So no, I'm not kidnapping you. I'm protecting you from people who will absolutely use you to get to me and who won't care about your baby when they do. The words were brutal, but Emma couldn't deny their logic. Her hands instinctively cradled her belly. How long? As long as it takes. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have. The SUV turned onto a private drive flanked by security gates that opened automatically. They passed through manicured grounds, past fountains and sculpted hedges, toward a house that could only be called an estate. Neoclassical architecture, all columns and marble and windows that probably cost more than most people earned in a lifetime. "Welcome to the sanctuary," Dante said softly. "Your gilded cage for the foreseeable future." Emma stared at the mansion, her exhaustion suddenly overwhelming. "I just want to go home." "I know." For the first time, his voice held something like sympathy. "But home isn't safe anymore. This is." The SUV stopped at the main entrance. Marcus opened the door and Dante stepped out, then turned to offer Emma his hand. She hesitated, staring at that outstretched palm, understanding that taking it would change everything. But what choice did she have? Emma placed her hand in his and let Dante Salvatore pull her into his world. The mansion's interior was exactly what she'd expected. Opulent, impersonal, designed to impress rather than comfort. Marble floors, soaring ceilings, artwork that probably belonged in museums. A woman in a housekeeper's uniform appeared, professional and unflappable, despite the late hour. "Mrs. Chen, this is Emma Reyes. She'll be staying with us indefinitely. Prepare the East Guest Suite. Comfortable, not formal. And have Dr. Reeves come by first thing tomorrow to check on her." Mrs. Chen nodded, her expression revealing nothing. "Of course, sir. Miss Reyes, if you'll follow me." Emma glanced at Dante, who was already moving toward what looked like an office, his phone pressed to his ear, issuing commands in that quietly terrifying way of his. She followed Mrs. Chen up a grand staircase and down a hallway lined with closed doors. The East Guest Suite was larger than Emma's entire apartment. King bed, sitting area, private bathroom with a tub big enough to swim in. Soft grays and creams, elegant without being cold. "There are clothes in the closet, various sizes," Mrs. Chen explained. "Mr. Salvatore keeps guest wardrobes prepared. If you need anything else, use the phone by the bed. Dial 0 for the kitchen, 1 for housekeeping, 2 for security." "Security?" "The grounds are monitored 24 hours. You're perfectly safe here, Miss Reyes." Safe. The word felt foreign. Emma nodded numbly, and Mrs. Chen departed with a quiet click of the door. Alone, Emma sank onto the bed and let herself shake. Her entire body trembled with delayed shock, with fear, with the overwhelming wrongness of everything. Hours ago, she'd been invisible. Now she was caught in something she couldn't understand, protected by a man who seemed as dangerous as the people hunting him. She should be terrified. She was terrified. But beneath the fear, some small, traitorous part of her noticed that for the first time in months, she didn't feel alone. What? Emma woke to sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows. For a disoriented moment, she didn't remember where she was. Then it all crashed back. The gunfire, the chaos, Dante's hand locked around her wrist, the mansion, the cage. She sat up slowly, her body aching in ways that had nothing to do with pregnancy. The bedside clock read 10:47 a.m. She'd slept for nearly 12 hours. A knock sounded at the door. "Come in," Emma called, her voice rough with sleep. Mrs. Chen entered carrying a breakfast tray. "Good morning, Miss Reyes. I took the liberty of preparing something light. Mr. Salvatore requested you eat before Dr. Reeves arrives." The tray held fresh fruit, yogurt, toast, and tea. Emma's stomach growled despite her anxiety. "Thank you. There's a selection of clothes in the closet. Mr. Salvatore suggests you dress comfortably. He'd like to speak with you after the doctor's visit." Of course he would. Emma nodded, and Mrs. Chen departed. The closet was absurd. Not just guest clothes, but an entire wardrobe in what appeared to be exactly her size. Maternity jeans, soft sweaters, dresses that would accommodate her growing belly. Someone had prepared this specifically for her, which meant Dante Salvatore had known she'd end up here. The thought should have terrified her. Instead, it just made her tired. Dr. Reeves arrived at noon, a kind-faced woman in her 50s who conducted a thorough examination without asking intrusive questions. The baby was fine, healthy, growing exactly as expected. Emma's blood pressure was slightly elevated, but given the circumstances, that was hardly surprising. "Rest," Dr. Reeves advised. "Minimal stress, plenty of fluids, and if you experience any cramping or spotting, call me immediately." Minimal stress. Right. After the doctor left, Emma found herself with nothing to do but wait. She explored the suite, discovered a small library attached to the sitting area, and was settling down with a book when another knock interrupted. "Miss Reyes, Mr. Salvatore is ready to see you." Emma followed a different staff member, a young man in a crisp suit, down to the main floor and through a maze of hallways. They stopped at a heavy wooden door. "Go ahead," the young man said, then disappeared. Emma knocked. "Enter." Dante's office was darker than the rest of the house. Wood-paneled walls, heavy furniture, shelves lined with books that looked actually read. He sat behind a massive desk, reviewing documents, and didn't look up immediately. "Sit," he said, gesturing to a leather chair across from him. Emma sat, waited. Finally, Dante set aside his papers and gave her his full attention. In daylight, he looked different. Still dangerous, still magnetic, but there were shadows under his eyes that suggested he hadn't slept. His shirt was rolled to his elbows, revealing forearms corded with muscle and marked with faint scars. "How are you feeling?" he asked. "Confused, scared, angry. Honest, good." He leaned back in his chair. "I'm going to tell you things now that you won't want to hear, Emma, but I need you to listen carefully because your life and your child's life depends on your understanding the situation you're in." Emma's hands clenched in her lap. "I'm listening." "The men who attacked the hotel last night were hired by a Russian organization called the Kozlov Syndicate. They've been trying to muscle into my territory for 18 months with escalating aggression. Last night was their most direct attempt yet." "Your territory?" Emma repeated. "You mean I run an empire that exists in the spaces between legal and illegal. Real estate, yes, legitimate hotels and properties, but also enforcement, protection, acquisitions that don't appear in annual reports. I'm not a good man, Emma. I've done things that would horrify you, but I'm honest about what I am, which is more than most people in my position can say." Emma processed this. It confirmed what she'd suspected, what everyone had whispered. Dante Salvatore wasn't just a tycoon. He was a criminal, a powerful, dangerous criminal who just admitted to God knew what sins. "Why are you telling me this?" she asked. "Because you deserve to know who's protecting you, and because I need you to understand why you can't leave." He pulled a folder from his desk drawer and slid it across to her. "Open it." Emma's hand shook as she opened the folder. Inside were photographs. Her apartment building. Her walking to work. Her at the grocery store. Her with Marco. The photos were dated, some from 6 months ago, showing her and Marco together, smiling, in love. Others more recent, showing her alone, pregnant, struggling. "Someone's been watching me," she whispered. "For months. Long before last night." Dante's voice was gentle now, almost kind. "Emma, I need to ask you something about Marco Russo, and I need you to tell me the absolute truth." Her head snapped up. "How do you know his name?" "Because Marco Russo stole $473,000 from one of my accounts 3 months ago. He accessed it through a shell company I use for legitimate investments, transferred the money through 6 different offshore accounts, and disappeared." Dante paused. "You were his fiancée. You lived with him. You're carrying his child. So I need you to tell me, Emma. Did you know? Were you part of it?" The room spun. Emma gripped the chair arms, her mind reeling. Marco had stolen from Dante Salvatore. Marco, who told her he was a financial consultant, who'd worked late hours and talked about big deals, who'd promised her security. Marco, who'd abandoned her exactly 3 months ago. "I didn't know," she managed. "I swear I had no idea. He told me he was a consultant. He'd come home late, sometimes wouldn't come home at all. But he said it was work, said he was building our future." The tears burned her eyes. "Then one day I came home and he was gone. All his things, his clothes, everything, just gone. He left me a note saying he was sorry, that he couldn't do this, that I was better off without him." "Do you still have the note?" "No, I burned it." The admission felt shameful. "I was so angry, so hurt. I burned everything he left behind." Dante studied her with those penetrating gray eyes. Emma forced herself to meet his gaze, to let him see the truth. She had nothing to hide. She'd been a fool. A blind, trusting fool. But she hadn't been complicit. "I believe you," he said finally. Relief flooded through her. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. He gestured to the folder. These photographs were found on a phone belonging to one of the operatives killed last night. Someone has been tracking you, Emma, following you, documenting your life, which means someone knows about your connection to Marco, and by extension, your connection to me. But I don't have a connection to you. I clean your hotel. I'm nobody. You stopped being nobody the moment Marco Russo chose you, and you became somebody the second I pulled you behind that pillar last night. Dante's expression was grim. The Kozlov syndicate wants their money back. They think Marco gave it to you, or they think you know where he is, or they think they can use you to draw him out of hiding. I don't know where he is. I haven't heard from him in 3 months. I know, but they don't. And even if they believed you, you're still useful as leverage against me. You're a visible weakness now, something they can exploit. Emma's breath came short and sharp. This is insane. I'm just a maid, a pregnant maid with student loan debt and a broken car. I'm not worth all this trouble. You're worth exactly as much trouble as people decide you're worth. Dante stood, moving around the desk to lean against it, closer to her now. Here's what's going to happen, Emma. You're going to stay here under my protection while I locate Marco Russo and recover my money. Once I have him, I'll negotiate with the Kozlov syndicate, settle this war, and eliminate the threat against you. Then you'll be free to leave and resume your life. How long will that take? I don't know. Weeks, possibly months. Months. Emma's hand moved to her belly. I'm due in 3 months. I'm aware. Something flickered across Dante's face, an emotion she couldn't identify. You'll have the best medical care available. Dr. Reeves will monitor you weekly. When it's time, we'll arrange for delivery at a private facility. You and your child will be safe, Emma. You have my word. The word of a criminal, she said bitterly. The word of a criminal is often more reliable than the word of honest men. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and touched her chin gently, lifting her face to meet his eyes. I know you're scared. I know this isn't the life you chose. But I will keep you safe. Whatever it takes, however long it takes, I will protect you and your child. That's a promise, Emma Reyes. And I don't break my promises. The touch of his fingers against her skin felt electric. Emma should pull away, should put distance between herself and this dangerous man. Instead, she found herself searching his face, looking for deception and finding only fierce certainty. Why? She whispered. Why do you care what happens to me? Dante's thumb brushed her jawline, a gesture so gentle it seemed at odds with everything else about him. Because you threw a champagne bottle at an armed man to save my life. Because you're carrying a child fathered by a coward who abandoned you. Because you've been surviving alone, fighting to keep your head above water, and nobody helped you. His eyes held hers. And because when I pulled you behind that pillar, when I felt you trembling against me, something in me decided you were mine to protect. Maybe that makes me possessive. Maybe it makes me dangerous. But it's the truth. Emma's heart hammered. She should be terrified. This was possessiveness, obsession, everything unhealthy and wrong. But the look in Dante's eyes wasn't cruel or controlling. It was protective, fierce, like he'd gone to war for her without even asking if she wanted him to. I don't understand you, she said. You don't have to understand me. You just have to trust me. He released her chin, stepping back to give her space. Can you do that, Emma? She thought about her options, returned to her apartment where someone had been watching her for months, go to the police, who couldn't protect her from Russian syndicates and vengeful criminals, or stay here, in this gilded cage, under the protection of a man who'd killed 3 people last night without hesitation and slept soundly afterward. It wasn't really a choice at all. I'll stay, Emma said quietly. But I have conditions. Dante's eyebrow rose. You're negotiating with me? You said I was free to leave once this is over. That means I'm not a prisoner, which means I have the right to set boundaries. A smile curved his mouth, genuine amusement this time. Fair enough. Name your conditions. First, I want regular updates about what's happening. I'm not a child, and I won't be kept in the dark about my own situation. Second, I want access to my things from my apartment, clothes, books, photos, things that are mine. Third, she hesitated. Third, I want to keep working. Not at the hotel, obviously, but something. I can't just sit here for months doing nothing. I'll lose my mind. Dante considered this. The first I can agree to. I'll brief you weekly on developments. The second is acceptable, though I'll need to send my people to retrieve your belongings. You're not setting foot in that apartment. As for the third, he tilted his head. What kind of work are you thinking? I don't know, something useful. Maybe I could help Mrs. Chen or organize something. I just need to feel like I'm contributing. You're 6 months pregnant and recovering from trauma. I'm 6 months pregnant and going stir-crazy from lack of purpose, Emma countered. Please, I need this. Dante was quiet for a long moment. Then, all right, I'll have Mrs. Chen find something appropriate. Light duties, nothing strenuous. But if Dr. Reeves says it's too much, you stop immediately. Agreed? Agreed. Good. He extended his hand. Do we have a deal, Emma Reyes? She looked at his outstretched hand, the same hand that had pulled her to safety, that had killed without hesitation, that had touched her face with surprising gentleness. This was a crossroads, a choice that would define everything that came next. Emma took his hand and shook it. We have a deal. His grip was warm, strong, and he held on just a fraction longer than necessary. Welcome to the sanctuary, Emma. Try not to hate it too much. As he released her hand and returned to his desk, already absorbed in the next crisis, Emma realized something that should have terrified her. She didn't think she would hate it at all, and that was the most dangerous thing of all. The first week passed in a strange fog of routine and unreality. Emma woke each morning in sheets softer than clouds, ate meals prepared by a chef who somehow knew exactly what her pregnancy cravings demanded, and spent her afternoons helping Mrs. Chen catalog the mansion's extensive library. It was comfortable work, sorting books, updating inventory lists, occasionally discovering a first edition that made her gasp. Mrs. Chen was patient and kind, never hovering, never treating Emma like she was fragile, but comfort didn't erase the reality of her situation. Armed guards patrolled the grounds, security cameras tracked every corner of the estate, and Dante Salvatore moved through his fortress like a king in exile, always present but rarely seen, conducting his war from behind closed doors. Emma saw him at dinner. That was the rule he'd established on her third day, appearing at her suite with an invitation that wasn't really an invitation. You'll eat dinner with me every evening, he'd said. I promised you updates. We'll talk then. So every night at 7, Emma found herself in the formal dining room, sitting across from a man who terrified and fascinated her in equal measure. Tonight, Mrs. Chen had prepared roasted chicken with vegetables and a risotto that melted on Emma's tongue. Dante ate methodically, his attention divided between his meal and the tablet beside his plate. Emma had learned not to interrupt when he was reading. He'd speak when he was ready. We found one of Marco's offshore accounts, he said finally, setting down his fork. In the Cayman Islands. Empty, but the transaction history shows he moved money through it 2 months ago. Emma's stomach tightened. Where did it go? Southeast Asia. Vietnam, specifically. From there, the trail goes cold. Dante's expression was neutral, but Emma had learned to read the small tells. The slight tightening around his eyes meant frustration. He's being careful. Knows how to cover his tracks. Someone taught him well. You think he had help? I know he had help. Marco Russo was a mid-level financial consultant with gambling debts and no particular talent for subterfuge. He didn't plan this theft alone, and he didn't execute it alone. Dante reached for his wine glass, swirled it absently, which means someone wanted my money badly enough to recruit and train a patsy to steal it. The Kozlov Syndicate? Possibly. Or someone using them as cover. His eyes met hers. How much did Marco tell you about his work? Emma had answered this question a dozen times already, in a dozen different ways. Dante was thorough, circling back to the same topics from new angles, testing for inconsistencies. She understood why. Trust had to be earned in his world, but it still stung. He said he worked for an investment firm, Sterling Capital Group. He'd leave early, come home late, always tired. Sometimes he'd get calls in the middle of the night and have to leave. She pushed risotto around her plate. I thought he was dedicated, driven. Now I know he was just a liar. Did he ever bring work home? Papers, files, laptops? He had a laptop, but he kept it password protected. Said it was company policy. Emma paused, remembering. Once, about 4 months before he left, I came home early and found him on the phone. He was speaking in a language I didn't recognize. When he saw me, he hung up immediately, said it was a client from overseas. Dante leaned forward, suddenly intent. What language? I don't know. It was harsh sounding. Lots of hard consonants. Russian? Emma closed her eyes, trying to recall the sound of Marco's voice through the bedroom door. Maybe. I really don't know. Dante sat back, his expression thoughtful. He tapped his fingers against the table, a rare tell that meant he was recalculating, reassessing. Did he have any friends? People he mentioned regularly? Not really. He said his work was confidential, that most of his colleagues were just business associates. The only person he talked about was his boss, someone named Victor, but I never met him. Victor. Dante pulled out his phone, typed rapidly. Last name? He never said. The silence stretched. Emma watched Dante's face, saw the moment something clicked into place. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. What? She asked. What is it? Viktor Kozlov, son of Dmitry Kozlov, head of the Kozlov syndicate. Dante's voice was soft, deadly. Your fiancé didn't just steal from me, Emma. He was working for my enemies the entire time. The words hit like a physical blow. Emma's hand moved instinctively to her belly, protective, grounding. Marco had lied about everything. Their entire relationship had been a fabrication, a cover story for whatever game he'd been playing. I'm so stupid, she whispered. You're not stupid. You're human. Dante's voice gentled. Trusting someone you love isn't stupidity. It's normal. He exploited that trust, which makes him a coward and a manipulator. Not you. Emma blinked back tears. She wouldn't cry. Not over Marco. Not anymore. So what now? Now we know Marco was an asset for the Kozlovs, which means they know everything about you, where you lived, where you worked, your habits, your vulnerabilities. It also means they've been planning this for longer than I thought. Dante stood, moved to the window overlooking the dark grounds. The attack at the hotel wasn't just about killing me. It was about sending a message. They wanted me to know they could reach me anywhere, hurt anyone I care about. But you don't care about me, Emma said. We barely know each other. He turned, and the look in his eyes made her breath catch. I pulled you behind that pillar, Emma. I put you in my car, brought you to my home, and told you I'd protect you. In my world, that's a declaration. The Kozlovs know that. Everyone knows that. You're under my protection now, which makes you valuable, which makes you a target. Emma's throat tightened. I didn't ask for this. I know, but here we are. He returned to the table, stood close enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. I meant what I said. I will keep you safe. But you need to understand the full picture. This isn't just about Marco's theft anymore. This is about territory, power, and respect. The Kozlovs are using you to prove they can hurt me. I'm using you to prove they can't. Using me, Emma repeated flatly. Protecting you, Dante corrected. There's a difference. Is there? For a long moment they stared at each other. Emma saw something shift in his expression, a crack in the armor, a glimpse of the man beneath the king. He raised his hand slowly, giving her time to pull away, and brushed a strand of hair from her face. Yes, he said quietly. There is. Because if I were just using you, I wouldn't care that you're scared. I wouldn't care that you cry at night when you think no one can hear. I wouldn't care that you're carrying a child fathered by a traitor, or that you have nightmares about the hotel, or that you flinch every time you hear a door slam. His thumb traced her cheekbone with devastating gentleness. But I do care, Emma, more than I should, more than is wise. Emma's heart hammered against her ribs. She should move away, should put distance between herself and this confession that felt too raw, too real. Instead, she found herself leaning into his touch, starving for kindness after months of isolation. This is insane, she whispered. Most of my life is insane. You get used to it. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. Then he dropped his hand and stepped back, restoring the careful distance. Get some rest. Dr. Reeves is coming tomorrow for your checkup. He was at the door when Emma found her voice. Dante? He paused, looked back. Thank you for being honest with me. Something complicated flickered across his face. You deserve honesty, Emma. You've had enough lies." Then he was gone, and Emma was alone with her tangled thoughts and the ghost of his touch against her skin. The days began to blur together. Emma settled into the rhythm of the estate. Mornings in the library, afternoons reading or walking the enclosed garden under the watchful eyes of security, evenings with Dante. She learned the names of the guards, the preferences of the kitchen staff, the quiet hierarchy that governed the mansion. She also learned about Dante through observation. He worked 18-hour days, conducting business in 3 languages, making decisions that moved millions of dollars with a single phone call. He was ruthless in negotiations, offering no mercy to those who crossed him. But he was also fair, rewarding loyalty, paying his people well, and maintaining a code of honor that seemed anachronistic in his world of violence and corruption. The staff adored him, not out of fear, Emma realized, but genuine respect. He knew their names, their families, their struggles. When one of the groundskeepers mentioned his daughter's medical bills, Dante had them paid in full without being asked. When Mrs. Chen's sister needed a job, he created a position for her. Emma saw these small kindnesses and wondered which version was real: the king who killed without hesitation, or the man who protected his own with fierce loyalty. Maybe both. Maybe neither. "You're thinking too loud," Dante said one evening, 2 weeks into her captivity. They were in his office this time, a break from the formal dining room routine. Emma sat curled in the leather chair by the fireplace, a blanket across her lap, while Dante reviewed contracts at his desk. It had become a comfortable silence between them, these evening hours where they existed in the same space without needing to fill it with words. "Sorry," Emma said. "I'll think quieter." He glanced up, amusement lighting his features. "What's on your mind?" "I was wondering which version of you is real, the criminal or the protector?" "Both, neither. Does it matter?" He set down his pen, gave her his full attention. "You want me to be a villain or a hero, Emma? Something simple you can categorize and understand, but people aren't that clean. We're all contradictions." "You've killed people." "Yes." "Doesn't that bother you?" Dante considered the question seriously. "It bothers me when I kill someone who doesn't deserve it. It bothers me when I have to kill when another solution existed. But most of the people I've killed were threats, to me, to mine, to innocent people who couldn't defend themselves. I don't lose sleep over those. That's terrifying. It's practical." He stood, moved to the bar cart, poured 2 glasses, whiskey for himself, sparkling water for her. He handed her the water, then settled in the chair opposite her. "You want to know what actually keeps me awake at night? The people I couldn't save. The ones who died because I was too slow, too trusting, or too arrogant to see the danger coming. Those haunt me, Emma. Not the enemies I put down, but the innocents I failed." Emma sipped her water, processing this. "Is that why you're so determined to protect me? Because you don't want another person on your conscience?" "Partly." His eyes held hers over the rim of his glass. "But mostly because when I saw you in that ballroom, pregnant and terrified and so damn brave, something in me recognized something in you. We're both survivors, Emma. Both fighting to protect the people we love, even when the world tells us we're not strong enough, not ruthless enough, not worthy enough. I saw that fire in you, and I decided it was worth protecting." "I'm not that brave," Emma said quietly. "I'm terrified all the time. Of you, of this situation, of what happens when it's over. I'm just good at pretending. That's what bravery is. Being terrified and doing it anyway." Dante leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "You don't trust me yet. I don't blame you. But I'm patient, Emma. I can wait." "Wait for what?" "For you to realize I mean what I say. That when I make a promise, I keep it. That you're safe here, with me, in ways you've never been safe before." The intensity in his voice made Emma's chest tight. She wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that this protection was genuine, that she wasn't just a pawn in his war. But trust was a luxury she couldn't afford anymore. "Tell me about your family," she said, changing the subject. "Do you have one?" Dante's expression shuddered briefly, then relaxed. "My parents died when I was 16. Car accident. After that, it was just me and my sister, Isabella. I raised her, built this empire to give her everything they would have wanted for her. Where is she now?" "Boston. She's a pediatric surgeon, married to a lawyer, 2 kids. She thinks I run a legitimate real estate business, and I'd like to keep it that way. A wry smile. Isabella got the moral compass in our family. I got the survival instinct. Does she know about this? Emma gestured vaguely, encompassing the mansion, the guards, the life he led. She knows I'm not entirely legitimate. We don't talk about the details. It's better that way. She can maintain plausible deniability, and I can keep her separate from the uglier parts of my world. Dante swirled his whiskey. She wanted me to go straight. Use my business acumen for legal ventures. I tried for a while, but the people I'd done business with didn't want to let me go. So I made a choice. Either fight them all and probably die, or consolidate power and become too dangerous to challenge. I chose survival. I always choose survival. Emma heard the regret beneath his words, the path not taken. Do you ever wish you'd made different choices? Every day. But regret is useless. You make decisions with the information you have, and you live with the consequences. He stood, moved to the window, his silhouette dark against the night. What about you, Emma? What did you want before Marco? Before all this? The question surprised her. No one had asked about her dreams in so long. I wanted to finish college. I was studying art history before I had to drop out to work. I wanted to work in a museum, or maybe teach, something where I could spend my days surrounded by beautiful things and help other people appreciate them. Why did you drop out? Money. My parents died when I was 20. Cancer took my mom, a heart attack took my dad 6 months later. They'd mortgaged everything for her treatments. I inherited debt and grief and not much else. I tried to keep going to school and work full-time, but it was too much. So I chose survival too, I guess. Dante turned to look at her, and something in his expression made her breath catch. You and I aren't so different, Emma Reyes. Both orphans, both fighters, both trying to build something beautiful from the wreckage we inherited. I'm not building anything. I'm just surviving. You're carrying a child, growing life inside you despite everything working against you. That's not just surviving, that's defiance. He moved back to his chair, sat down close enough that their knees almost touched. When this is over, when you're free and safe, what will you do? Emma's hand moved to her belly, feeling the small kicks that had become constant companions. I don't know, raise my son. Find a way to give him the life he deserves. Maybe go back to school eventually when he's older. Well, what if I told you that you could have all of that now? That you could finish your degree, raise your son without worrying about rent or bills or whether you can afford daycare? Emma's pulse quickened. What are you saying? I'm saying that when Marco stole from me, he created a debt. But the debt isn't yours to pay. It's his. You're a victim of his choices. And victims deserve compensation, not punishment. Dante's eyes searched hers. Stay here after this is resolved. Not as a prisoner, not as someone under protection, but as part of my household. Finish your degree. I'll arrange for tutors, whatever you need. Raise your son in safety and comfort. In exchange, I'd ask only that you consider this place your home. Emma stared at him, trying to process the offer. Why would you do that? Because I can. Because you deserve better than what you've had. And because... He paused, seemed to wage an internal battle, then continued quietly, because I've become accustomed to having you here. To our dinners, our conversations, to knowing you're safe under my roof. The thought of you leaving, of going back to struggling alone, is unacceptable to me. That's not a good reason. It's the only reason that matters. Dante reached out, took her hand in his. His touch was warm, solid, real. You don't have to answer now. Think about it. But know that the offer is genuine, Emma. You and your child would want for nothing. Emma looked down at their joined hands, at the contrast between his scarred, deadly fingers and her own. This was dangerous territory. She was already too comfortable here, already too aware of Dante's presence, his voice, the way he looked at her like she was something precious. Accepting his offer would blur lines that should stay clear. But the alternative was going back to her lonely apartment, to scrambling for rent, to raising her son in poverty and fear. Was her pride worth more than her child's future? I'll think about it, she said finally. That's all I ask. He squeezed her hand gently, then released it. It's late. You should rest. Emma stood, pulled the blanket tighter around her shoulders. At the door, she paused. Dante? What happens when you find Marco? His expression went cold, remote. That's not something you need to worry about. It is if you're going to kill him. He's my baby's father. Whatever he did, whatever he is, my son deserves to know the truth about him. Not some sanitized version, but the actual truth. Dante was quiet for a long moment. I won't kill him unless he forces my hand, but he will answer for what he did. To me and to you. That's non-negotiable. As long as I get to face him first, to hear his reasons, his excuses, whatever pathetic justification he has, I need that closure. I can give you that. Dante's expression softened slightly. You deserve answers, Emma. I promise you'll get them. She nodded, satisfied, and left him to his whiskey and his demons. 3 weeks into her captivity, Emma woke to urgent voices outside her door. She grabbed a robe, heart pounding, and opened it to find Marcus in the hallway, phone pressed to his ear, his expression grim. What's happening? She asked. Marcus looked up, seemed to debate what to tell her, then said, We found him. Marco Russo. He's in Bangkok. Emma's stomach dropped. Is Dante already on his way? He left an hour ago. Marcus's expression softened. He wanted to let you sleep. Said to tell you he'd call when it was done. He went to Thailand? Alone? Not alone. He took a team. Best operatives we have. Marcus's phone buzzed insistently. I have to take this. Stay inside, Emma. We're on high alert until this is resolved. He disappeared down the hallway, leaving Emma alone with her spiraling thoughts. Dante had gone after Marco. After the man who'd stolen from him, betrayed him, and by extension, betrayed her. What would happen when they found him? What would Dante do? The day crawled past with agonizing slowness. Emma couldn't focus on anything. She tried to read, to organize, to distract herself, but every thought circled back to Bangkok, to Dante, to the confrontation that was happening half a world away. Mrs. Chen brought lunch, then dinner, both barely touched. The sun set, and still no word. It was nearly midnight when Emma's phone rang, the secure line Dante had given her for emergencies. She grabbed it with shaking hands. Dante? I have him. His voice was tight, controlled fury barely leashed. Marco Russo is in custody. He's alive, mostly unharmed, and very eager to talk. Relief and dread warred in Emma's chest. What did he say? Nothing yet. I wanted to give you first chance. A pause. I'm putting you on video. The phone switched to a video call, and Emma found herself staring at a stark room that looked like something from a thriller. Concrete walls, a single light, and in the center, tied to a chair, was Marco. He looked different, thinner, harder, with a desperate edge that hadn't been there before. When he saw her on the screen, his face crumpled. Emma, oh, thank God, Emma, I'm so sorry. Shut up. Emma's voice was ice. 3 months of pain, anger, and betrayal crystallized into something sharp and cutting. You don't get to apologize. You don't get to look relieved. You abandoned me, Marco. You stole money, lied about everything, and left me alone and pregnant with nothing. I had to. Victor said they'd kill me if I didn't, so you saved yourself and condemned me instead. Emma felt Dante's presence off-screen, a silent support. Tell me the truth. All of it. Why did you do this? Marco's composure shattered. Words tumbled out in a desperate rush, gambling debts to the Kozlov syndicate, Victor's offer to clear them in exchange for a simple job, stealing from Dante Salvatore's accounts. It was supposed to be clean, simple. Marco would take the money, disappear for a few months while things cooled down, then come back for Emma. But then they told me I couldn't come back, Marco said, tears streaming down his face. They said if I contacted you, if I tried to see you, they'd kill you both, so I stayed away. I thought I was protecting you. You were protecting yourself, Emma said coldly. If you'd loved me, you would have warned me. You would have told me the truth, given me a chance to run or hide or prepare. Instead, you left me with a note and a nightmare. I'm sorry. Emma, please, I'm so sorry. Sorry doesn't fix this. Sorry doesn't give me back the months I spent terrified and alone. Sorry doesn't explain why you were working with Victor Kozlov in the first place, why you courted me, why you proposed. Understanding crystallized. I was never real to you, was I? I was just part of the cover story. The loyal fiancé who made you look stable and trustworthy. Marco's silence was confirmation enough. Emma felt something inside her break and then immediately heal, stronger than before. This was closure. This was the death of every illusion, every false hope. Marco wasn't the man she'd thought he was. He'd never been that man. I have nothing else to say to you, Emma said quietly. You're not worth my anger anymore. She looked off screen toward where she knew Dante stood. I'm done. Do whatever you need to do. The call ended. Emma sat in the darkness of her room, waiting for tears that didn't come. She felt empty, hollowed out, but also strangely free. The ghost of Marco Russo no longer had power over her. When Dante called back 30 minutes later, his voice was gentle. Are you all right? I think so. What happens to him now? He's given us names, account numbers, everything he knows about the Kozlov operation. In exchange, I'm letting him live, but he'll spend the next decade in a very unpleasant prison, far from anyone who might want to help him. A pause. He signed away all parental rights to your child. The documents are already filed. He'll never be able to claim any connection to your son. Emma's hand moved to her belly. Good. My son deserves better than a coward for a father. He does. Something in Dante's voice made her pulse quicken. Emma, when I get back, we need to talk. About your future, about your son's future, about us. Us? Us, he confirmed quietly. Get some rest. I'll be home tomorrow. Home. He'd called the mansion home, and Emma realized with a start that it had started to feel that way. These walls, this room, the library, and the gardens, they'd become familiar, comfortable, safe. She'd stopped thinking of herself as a prisoner weeks ago. Now she wasn't sure what she was, but she knew with absolute certainty that when Dante returned, everything would change. And for the first time in months, Emma wasn't afraid of change. She was ready for it. The weeks that followed taught Emma that captivity could wear a velvet glove. She woke each morning in sheets softer than clouds, ate meals prepared by a chef who somehow knew she craved strawberries and couldn't stomach anything with onions. Mrs. Chen found her work organizing the estate's extensive library, cataloging first editions and rare manuscripts that probably cost more than Emma would earn in a lifetime. It was peaceful work, mindless enough to calm her racing thoughts, but engaging enough to keep the anxiety at bay. But peace was a fragile thing in Dante Salvatore's world. She saw him rarely in those first 2 weeks. He was a shadow moving through the mansion at odd hours, always on his phone, always strategizing. Sometimes she'd catch glimpses of him through windows, pacing the grounds with Marcus, his face carved from stone as he issued orders. Then he'd appear at dinner, charming and. Then he'd appear at dinner, charming and attentive, asking about her day as if he were a normal man and this were a normal situation. It was disconcerting how quickly she began to look forward to those dinners. Dr. Reeves says the baby's measuring ahead of schedule, Emma mentioned one evening, pushing roasted vegetables around her plate. They ate in a smaller dining room, intimate compared to the formal one, at a table that sat 8 but felt less cavernous with just the two of them. Strong heartbeat, active. He's a fighter. Dante cut his steak with surgical precision. Takes after his mother. Could be a girl. Do you want to know? Emma had avoided finding out, some superstitious part of her afraid that knowing would make the situation more real, more terrifying. But sitting here in Dante's home, under his protection, she found herself reconsidering. I don't know. Do you think I should? Dante looked up from his plate, and the genuine interest in his eyes caught her off guard. I think you should do whatever brings you comfort, but if you're asking my opinion, knowing would let you prepare. Choose a name. Imagine a future. A future in captivity? A future nonetheless. He set down his knife and fork, giving her his full attention. Emma, I know this isn't what you wanted, but it won't be forever. Eventually this will end and you'll have your life back. Why not use this time to plan for what comes next? She wanted to argue, to push back against his calm certainty. But the truth was, she'd been so focused on surviving day to day that she hadn't let herself think beyond the next crisis. A name. a nursery, the tiny, precious details of bringing a life into the world. Maybe you're right, she admitted quietly. I usually am. The hint of a smile softened his features. It's both my greatest strength and my most irritating quality. Despite everything, Emma laughed. It startled out of her, unexpected and genuine, and Dante's smile widened in response. For just a moment, the weight lifted, and she could almost pretend this was normal. Then his phone buzzed, and the moment shattered. Dante glanced at the screen, and his expression went cold. Excuse me. I need to take this. He left without another word, and Emma was alone with her half-eaten dinner and the creeping sense that the other shoe was about to drop. It fell 2 days later. Emma was in the library, alphabetizing a collection of vintage mysteries, when Marcus appeared in the doorway. His usually composed face was tight with tension. Miss Reyes, Mr. Salvatore needs to see you, immediately. The urgency in his tone made Emma's stomach clench. She followed him through the mansion, her heart rate accelerating with each step. They descended to the lower level, to a part of the estate she'd never seen. Reinforced doors, keycard access, the subtle hum of serious security. Marcus opened a door to what could only be called a war room. Banks of monitors displayed security feeds from locations across the city. Maps covered one wall, marked with pins and notations. And in the center of it all stood Dante, his shirt sleeves rolled up, his face harder than she'd ever seen it. He wasn't alone. 2 men in tactical gear flanked a third man bound to a chair. The bound man's face was bruised, bloodied, but conscious. His eyes widened when he saw Emma. Emma, please, you have to help me." The voice hit her like a physical blow. "Marco." Emma's knees buckled. Marcus caught her elbow, steadying her, but she couldn't look away from the man she'd loved, the man who'd abandoned her, sitting broken and pleading in Dante Salvatore's war room. "I'm sorry," Dante said, and he actually sounded apologetic. "I know this is difficult, but I need you here for this conversation." "You found him." Emma's voice came out strangled. 3 days ago, Budapest. He was living under an assumed name, working for a tech startup, apparently planning to disappear permanently. Dante moved closer to Marco, and there was something predatory in the movement. "Weren't you, Marco?" "I can explain." "Oh, I'm sure you can. You're very good at explanations. At lies." Dante's hand shot out, gripping Marco's jaw and forcing his head up. "You stole from me. You abandoned a pregnant woman, and then you tried to sell information about my operations to the Kozlov syndicate to buy yourself protection." Emma's world tilted. "What?" Marco's eyes darted to her, desperate. "I didn't have a choice. They found me, Emma. They knew I'd taken the money, and they said they'd kill me unless I gave them something on Salvatore. I never meant for you to get hurt. I thought if I just disappeared, you'd be safe." "You thought abandoning me 6 months pregnant would keep me safe?" The words ripped out of Emma, years of hurt and anger finally finding a target. "You stole money from a man like him, and you just left me there to deal with the consequences? I didn't know you'd get involved. I didn't think you'd care about some maid." Dante's fist connected with Marco's face before Emma could blink. The crack of impact echoed in the concrete room. Marco's head snapped back, blood spraying from his split lip. "You will speak respectfully about the mother of your child," Dante said softly, dangerously, "or I will remove your ability to speak at all." Marco spat blood onto the floor. "She's not even carrying my kid, is she? You move fast, Salvatore. How long after I left did you swoop in? How long before you had her in your bed?" This time, Emma moved. Her hand connected with Marco's face with a satisfying crack, her palm stinging from the impact. She'd never hit anyone in her life, but rage and betrayal gave her strength. "This baby is yours," she hissed. "Your son. The child you abandoned without a second thought because you were too much of a coward to face the consequences of your actions." Silence fell. Even Dante looked surprised. Marco stared at her, something like shame finally breaking through the fear in his eyes. "A son?" "Yes. A son you'll never meet. A son who'll grow up knowing his father chose money over him, chose himself over him." Emma's voice shook, but she held her ground. "I loved you, Marco. I trusted you. I built a future around you, and you threw it all away for what? $400,000? $473,000, Marco corrected weakly. "Oh well, in that case," Emma's laugh was bitter. I hope it was worth it. I hope every cent was worth abandoning your child. She turned to Dante, who was watching her with an expression she couldn't read. I want to leave now. Of course. Dante gestured to Marcus. Take her upstairs. Make sure she has whatever she needs. Marcus touched her elbow gently, guiding her toward the door. But Emma paused at the threshold, looking back at the man she'd once planned to marry. Whatever he does to you, she said quietly, you deserve it. Then she let Marcus lead her away, leaving Marco's desperate pleas echoing behind her. She made it to her suite before the shaking started. Her hands trembled violently as she tried to unlock the door, her vision blurring with tears she'd refused to shed in front of Marco. Marcus opened the door for her without a word, his face kind. Would you like me to call Mrs. Chen? He asked. No, I just want to be alone. He nodded and departed, closing the door softly behind him. Emma sank onto the bed and finally let herself break. She cried for the future she'd lost, for the man she'd thought Marco was, for her son, who would grow up without a father because his biological one was a coward and a thief. She cried until her throat was raw, and her eyes burned, and there was nothing left inside her but hollow exhaustion. A knock interrupted her grief. I said I wanted to be alone, Emma called out, her voice wrecked. I know, Dante's voice muffled through the door, but I'm coming in anyway. The door opened before she could protest. Dante entered carrying a tray with tea and what looked like cookies. He set it on the bedside table, then sat in the chair across from her, maintaining a respectful distance. I'm sorry you had to see that, he said. Emma wiped at her face with the back of her hand. Did you kill him? No. Are you going to? Dante was quiet for a moment. That depends on what he tells me in the next few hours, and what the Kozlov syndicate does with the information he sold them. He said it was a son. Emma's hand moved to her belly, to the life growing there. I've been calling the baby It for months because I was too scared to know, too scared to get attached in case something went wrong. But it's a boy, my son, and you'll be an excellent mother to him. How can you know that? Because you're already protecting him, already putting his needs above your fear. Dante leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. Emma, Marco was right about one thing. This baby deserves better than him as a father. He doesn't have anyone else. Yes, he does. The certainty in Dante's voice made her look up. He has you, and for as long as you're under my protection, he has me too. Emma stared at him, this dangerous man who'd killed without hesitation, who ruled a criminal empire, who should terrify her, but somehow didn't. Why do you care so much? I told you. When I pulled you behind that pillar, something in me decided you were mine to protect. That's not a reason. That's possession. Maybe. Dante's gray eyes held hers. Or maybe I recognize something in you that I understand. You're a survivor, Emma. You've been fighting alone for so long, you've forgotten what it's like to have someone in your corner. I know what that feels like. I know what it does to you. He paused. My mother raised me alone. My father was a piece of work who decided we weren't worth his time. I watched her work 3 jobs, sacrifice everything, to give me a chance at something better. She died when I was 16, and I swore I'd never let anyone else I cared about fight alone. The revelation stunned her. Dante Salvatore speaking about his past, his mother, the origin of the man he'd become. I'm sorry. Don't be. She taught me everything that matters, how to fight, how to survive, how to protect the people who matter. He stood, moving to the window. Your son will never wonder if he's wanted, Emma. He'll never question if he's worth protecting, because you'll make sure of it, and while you're here, so will I. Something shifted in Emma's chest. Not attraction, exactly, though she couldn't deny Dante was magnetic. Something deeper. Recognition. Like he'd seen straight through her defenses to the terrified woman beneath and decided she was worth defending anyway. Thank you, she whispered. Dante turned from the window, and his expression was gentler than she'd ever seen it. Drink your tea, try to sleep. Tomorrow will be easier. Will it? Probably not. But I found that lies of comfort have their place. Despite everything, Emma almost smiled. You're a strange man, Dante Salvatore. So I've been told. He moved toward the door, then paused. Emma? For what it's worth, I'm glad you hit him. He deserved worse, but there was something deeply satisfying about watching you deliver justice personally. This time she did smile. It felt good. Violence often does, that's why it's dangerous. He opened the door. Good night, Emma. Good night. After he left, Emma poured herself tea and discovered the cookies were chocolate chip, her favorite, though she'd never mentioned it. Someone had been paying attention. She ate 2 cookies, drank the entire pot of tea, and fell asleep with her hand resting on her belly, murmuring quiet promises to the sun growing there. Things changed after that night. Dante began joining her for breakfast, not just dinner. He'd appear in the morning room with coffee and the newspaper, settling into the chair across from her as if it were the most natural thing in the world. They'd eat in comfortable silence, occasionally discussing articles or sharing observations about the estate staff. It was domestic in a way that should have felt wrong, but somehow didn't. Marcus tells me you finished cataloging the library, Dante mentioned one morning, spreading jam on toast with the same precise movements he applied to everything. Impressive work. The previous cataloging system was a disaster. It was organized by color, Emma said, still appalled by the discovery. Who organizes books by color? Someone with more aesthetics than sense. He glanced up. You did good work. Thank you. The genuine appreciation in his voice warmed her. I enjoyed it, though I'm running out of things to organize now. I'm sure we can find something. He paused, considering. Actually, I have a project that might interest you. The estate's east wing hasn't been updated in decades. I've been considering converting it into a residential space, somewhere more comfortable, less museum-like. I could use someone with actual taste to oversee the design. Emma blinked. You want me to decorate your house? I want you to make part of it livable. There's a difference. I've acquired this estate through business necessity, not personal choice. Most of it feels like a hotel. He met her eyes. You have a gift for creating warmth. I saw it in how you arranged the library. Small touches that made it feel welcoming instead of pretentious. I rearranged some chairs and added bookends. You added life. He set down his toast. Will you consider it? It would give you something to focus on, and I'd compensate you fairly. Dante, you're already housing me, feeding me, protecting me, and you're going stir-crazy from lack of purpose. This would be a legitimate project, Emma. I need it done, and I trust your judgment. He leaned back in his chair. Besides, I'd rather pay you for your work than watch you slowly lose your mind organizing my sock drawer out of boredom. Despite herself, Emma laughed. You have people who organize your sock drawer. Exactly my point. She considered the offer. A real project, something meaningful, a chance to create rather than just catalog. And truthfully, the idea of transforming cold, impersonal space into something warm and livable appealed to her more than she wanted to admit. All right, she said, I'll do it. But I have full creative control, and if you don't like what I choose, you can fire me. Dante's smile was devastating. Deal. They shook on it, his hand warm and solid in hers, and Emma ignored the flutter in her chest that had nothing to do with pregnancy. The East Wing project consumed her. Dante gave her an unlimited budget and complete freedom, which was both exhilarating and terrifying. Emma spent hours with interior designers, reviewing fabric samples and paint swatches, debating the merits of hardwood versus marble. She discovered she had opinions about crown molding and strong feelings about lighting fixtures. More than that, she discovered she was good at this. The designers respected her vision. The contractors followed her instructions. And slowly, the cold, cavernous spaces transformed into something beautiful. Warm grays and soft creams, comfortable furniture that invited you to sit, windows that let in natural light. She created a reading nook with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, a sitting room with a fireplace, bedrooms that felt like sanctuaries rather than showpieces. Dante would appear occasionally to check on progress, and Emma found herself looking forward to those visits more than she should. This is remarkable, he said one afternoon, standing in what would become the main sitting room. Workers bustled around them, installing custom cabinetry, but he was focused entirely on her. You've made it feel like a home. That was the goal. Emma gestured to the fireplace mantel. I thought we could add personal touches here. Photos, maybe some artwork that actually means something instead of just expensive pieces chosen by a decorator. I don't have many photos. Then we'll start a collection. She turned to face him. Everyone deserves a home that tells their story, Dante. Even you. Something flickered in his eyes. Vulnerability, maybe, or surprise. I'm not sure my story is one that should be told. Everyone's story matters. Even criminals? Even criminals. Emma held his gaze. You're not just what you do, Dante. You're also the man who made sure I had chocolate chip cookies when I was crying, who checks on me every morning to make sure I'm okay, who's given me purpose when I felt useless. She paused. You're more than your worst choices. Dante was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, the gesture achingly tender. You have a dangerous amount of faith in people, Emma Reyes. Only in people who've earned it. His hand lingered against her cheek, and Emma's breath caught. They stood there, frozen in a moment that felt suspended from time, surrounded by the sounds of construction, but utterly alone. She could feel the warmth of his palm, see the way his eyes had darkened, sense the shift in the air between them. Then a worker dropped a piece of lumber with a crash, and the spell broke. Dante stepped back, his expression carefully neutral. I should let you get back to work. This is looking exceptional, Emma. Truly. He left before she could respond, and Emma was alone with her racing heart and the uncomfortable realization that what she felt for Dante Salvatore had evolved far beyond gratitude. That evening, Dr. Reeves conducted her weekly checkup and delivered news that made Emma's world tilt sideways. Your blood pressure is slightly elevated, the doctor said, reviewing her notes. Nothing critical, but I'd like to monitor it closely. Are you experiencing any unusual stress? Emma almost laughed. Unusual stress, like being held in protective custody by a crime lord while carrying the child of a man who'd betrayed them both and was currently imprisoned somewhere in this very estate. Some, she admitted. Well, try to minimize it. Rest when you can. Avoid emotional upheaval. Dr. Reeves smiled kindly. You're in your third trimester now, Emma. Your body is preparing for delivery. The next few months are crucial. After the doctor left, Emma sat on her bed and tried to process the timeline. 3 months. In 3 months, she'd have a baby. A son. And she'd be living here, in Dante's estate, under his protection, with no idea when or if she'd ever reclaim her normal life. The thought terrified her. What terrified her more was the small voice in her head whispering that maybe she didn't want to leave. A knock interrupted her spiraling thoughts. Come in, she called. Dante entered, his face troubled. Dr. Reeves briefed me on your blood pressure. Of course she did. Emma, I'm fine. She said it's nothing critical. But it could become critical if you don't manage your stress. He moved closer, his concern evident. What can I do? How can I make this easier for you? You can tell me what's happening with Marco, with the Kozlov syndicate, with all of it. Emma stood, facing him, saying, You promised me weekly updates, but it's been 3 weeks since you found Marco, and you've told me nothing. I can't manage my stress when I'm in the dark about my own situation. Dante's jaw tightened. You're right. I've been trying to protect you from the details, but that was wrong. He gestured to the sitting area. Sit. I'll tell you everything. They settled into the chairs, and Dante began to speak. Marco gave me information about his dealings with the Kozlov syndicate. Names, contact methods, the details of what he sold them. It's enough for me to negotiate, but not enough to end this completely. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. The syndicate wants their money back, all of it, plus interest for the trouble Marco caused. They also want assurance that I won't retaliate for the hotel attack. Will you give them what they want? I'll return the money. It's business, and business can be resolved with capital, but I won't promise not to retaliate. They killed 6 people at that gala, Emma. Innocent people who had nothing to do with our conflict. That requires an answer. Emma's stomach clenched. An answer meaning what? Meaning I'll find the men who planned the attack, and I'll make sure they understand that murdering civilians isn't acceptable business practice. You're going to kill them. Yes. The blunt honesty shouldn't have surprised her, but it still made her flinch. And then what? They retaliate against you, you retaliate against them, and it never ends? It ends when one side decides the cost is too high to continue. Dante's expression was grim. I've been in this business long enough to know that peace requires strength. If I let this pass without response, every organization in the city will see me as weak. More people will die. The only way to prevent further bloodshed is to make this retaliation so decisive that nobody dares to try again. That's insane. That's survival. Emma stood pacing to the window. Outside, the grounds were beautiful. Manicured gardens, fountains, the illusion of peace. But beneath it all was violence and death and an endless cycle of vengeance. "What about me?" she asked quietly. "What about my son? Are we just collateral in your war?" "You're not collateral, you're—" Dante stopped, seeming to struggle for words. "You're what I'm trying to protect. All of this, every decision I make is to ensure that when this is over, you and your son can walk away safely. And if you die in the process, if your decisive retaliation gets you killed," she turned to face him, "what happens to us then?" Dante stood and crossed to her, close enough that she could see the silver flecks in his gray eyes. "I won't die, Emma. You can't promise that. I can promise that I'll do everything in my power to come back, that I'll fight with everything I have to protect you." His hand came up to cup her face, his thumb brushing her cheekbone. "I know you didn't choose this. I know you didn't ask to be dragged into my world. But you're here now, and I will not let anything happen to you or your child. That's my oath to you." Emma's breath stuttered. His touch was gentle, reverent, so at odds with the violence he described so casually. "I'm scared, Dante. I know. I'm scared of what's coming. Scared of bringing my son into this world. Scared of—" She stopped, unable to finish. "Scared of what?" he prompted gently. "Scared of how I feel about you." The admission hung between them, raw and honest. Dante's eyes widened slightly, surprise breaking through his usual control. "Emma, I know I shouldn't. I know it's wrong and complicated and probably just some trauma response, but I can't help it." The words tumbled out in a rush. "You've been kinder to me than anyone in my life. You've protected me, supported me, given me purpose when I had none. And somewhere along the way, I stopped seeing you as my captor and started seeing you as someone I care about." Dante's other hand came up to frame her face, his touch achingly tender. "You're not wrong to feel that way. And it's not just trauma." His voice was rough, unguarded in a way she'd never heard. "I've been trying to keep distance between us, trying to be professional and appropriate. But the truth is, I think about you constantly. I rearrange my schedule to have breakfast with you. I check on the East Wing project 3 times a day just for an excuse to see you. And when Dr. Reeves told me about your blood pressure, I wanted to tear apart anyone who'd caused you stress, including myself." Emma's heart hammered against her ribs. "What are we doing, Dante?" "I don't know." His forehead rested against hers, and she could feel his breath against her lips. "All I know is that you've become the most important thing in my world, and I'm terrified of losing you. I'm 6 months pregnant with another man's child. I don't care. I'm a liability, a weakness people can exploit. You're a strength I never knew I needed." Emma closed her eyes, overwhelmed by the intensity of his words, his presence, the impossible situation they'd found themselves in. This was madness. Falling for a criminal, for a man who killed without remorse, for someone whose world was violence and darkness. But when had her heart ever listened to logic? "Kiss me," she whispered. Dante went still. "Emma, please, I need to know this is real, that I'm not imagining it." For a moment she thought he'd refuse. Then his lips brushed against hers, soft and questioning, giving her every chance to pull away. Emma surged forward instead, her hands fisting in his shirt, kissing him with all the desperate need that had been building for weeks. Dante responded with controlled passion, one hand tangling in her hair while the other splayed across her lower back, careful of her belly, mindful of her condition even as he deepened the kiss. He tasted like coffee and something darker, something uniquely him, and Emma felt like she was drowning in the best possible way. "Discovers that I care about you. That you discovers that I care about you, that you matter to me beyond simple protection. Then we'll deal with it." Emma's hands were still fisted in his shirt, unwilling to let go. "Together." Dante pulled back enough to meet her eyes, and what she saw there made her breath catch. Not just desire, but devotion. Fierce, absolute, terrifying devotion. "Together," he repeated. Then he kissed her again, softer this time, a promise sealed with lips and breath and the weight of everything they'd become to each other. When they finally separated, reality reasserted itself. Emma was pregnant, trapped in protective custody, tangled with a criminal who had enemies circling like sharks. Nothing about this was simple or safe or smart, but as Dante helped her to the couch and settled beside her, his arm around her shoulders and her head resting against his chest, Emma couldn't bring herself to regret it. For the first time in months, she didn't feel alone, and that, she thought, was worth almost any risk. The kiss changed everything and nothing at all. Emma woke the next morning to find Dante already gone, his side of the couch cold, though she could still feel the ghost of his arms around her from where she'd fallen asleep against his chest. A note sat on the coffee table in bold, decisive handwriting. Had to handle business. Breakfast is waiting downstairs. Don't overthink last night. We'll figure this out together. Don't overthink, as if that were possible. Emma showered and dressed, her mind replaying every moment of the previous evening. The kiss. The confession. The way Dante had looked at her like she was something precious instead of a complication. Her reflection in the mirror showed a woman she barely recognized. Flushed cheeks, bright eyes, a hand resting protectively over the swell of her belly where her son grew stronger each day. This was dangerous. Not just physically, though that threat was real enough, but emotionally. She was falling for a man whose world was built on violence, who'd admitted he would kill without hesitation, who operated by rules she didn't understand and probably never would. And yet, Mrs. Chen was arranging fresh flowers in the breakfast room when Emma arrived. The older woman's expression remained professionally neutral, but Emma caught the knowing glint in her eyes. Good morning, Miss Reyes. Mr. Salvatore asked me to ensure you ate well this morning. The baby needs proper nutrition. Well, he's very concerned about nutrition for someone who regularly skips meals, Emma observed, settling into her usual chair. Mr. Salvatore has always been better at caring for others than himself. Mrs. Chen poured coffee, then hesitated. If I may speak freely, Miss Reyes? Please. I've worked for Mr. Salvatore for 8 years. I've seen him conduct business, entertain associates, navigate situations that would break lesser men. But I've never seen him the way he is around you. She met Emma's eyes directly. Whatever is developing between you, it's changed him, softened him. And I think that's a very good thing. The word settled into Emma's chest, warm and unsettling. I don't know what's developing between us, Mrs. Chen. I'm not sure either of us does. Then perhaps you should find out before circumstances decide for you. The housekeeper's smile was gentle. Life rarely waits for us to be ready, Miss Reyes. Sometimes we simply have to be brave. Before Emma could respond, Marcus appeared in the doorway, his expression tense. Miss Reyes, I need you to come with me. Now. The urgency in his voice killed her appetite instantly. What's wrong? Mr. Salvatore's orders. Please, we need to move quickly. Emma followed him through corridors she'd learned by heart, but instead of heading to Dante's office, Marcus led her deeper into the estate, to the reinforced section she'd only visited once before. The war room. Her stomach clenched with apprehension. Dante stood before the bank of monitors, his posture rigid with controlled fury. He was on the phone, speaking in rapid Italian, his tone sharp enough to cut. When he saw Emma, something in his expression shifted, the rage banking slightly, making room for concern. I'll call you back, he said into the phone, then ended the call without waiting for a response. Emma, I'm sorry to pull you down here, but we have a situation. What kind of situation? He gestured to one of the monitors. Security footage showed a residential street, her street, Emma realized with a jolt, her apartment building. And standing outside, looking directly at the security camera as if he knew exactly where it was, stood a man in a long coat. He held up a sign, the message clear even through the grainy footage, we know where she lives. Emma's blood went cold. When was this taken? 20 minutes ago. My people are already moving to intercept, but he's gone. Professional. He wanted us to see this. Dante's hands curled into fists. The Kozlov Syndicate is sending a message. They know I'm protecting you. They know you matter to me, and they want me to understand they can reach you whenever they choose. But I'm here. I'm safe. For now. But they're escalating, Emma, trying to force my hand. He turned to face her fully. I need to ask you something, and I need complete honesty. Are you willing to testify against Marco Russo if it comes to that? The question threw her. Testify? To who? The FBI has been investigating the Kozlov syndicate for 18 months. Money laundering, racketeering, murder for hire. If I give them Marco, along with the information he sold about the syndicate's operations, they could potentially dismantle the organization from the inside. Dante's expression was grim. But they'd need corroboration. Someone who could testify to Marco's theft, his connection to me, the timeline of events. You're the only person who can provide that perspective. Emma's mind raced. Testify against Marco. Stand up in federal court and detail his crimes, his betrayal, everything that had led to this moment. The thought made her sick, but beneath the nausea was something harder. Anger. Marco had done this. He'd stolen, lied, and sold information that put innocent people in danger. He deserved to face justice. Would I be safe? She asked. Would my son be safe? Witness protection. New identities, relocation, federal marshals monitoring your security for years. It's comprehensive. He paused. But it would also mean disappearing completely, leaving behind everything and everyone you know. I don't have anyone. The words came out flat. No family, no real friends. Marco made sure of that, isolated me until he was all I had. And then he left. You have me. The quiet certainty in Dante's voice made her look up. He'd moved closer without her noticing, close enough that she could see the storm brewing in his gray eyes. If you do this, he continued, if you testify and enter protection, I won't be able to follow you. The FBI won't allow it. They won't let you have contact with anyone from your previous life, especially not someone with my background. His jaw clenched. I'd lose you completely. The pain in those words was unmistakable. Emma felt it echo in her own chest, sharp and visceral. After weeks of growing closer, of building something fragile and precious between them, the idea of being ripped away and scattered to the wind felt unbearable. What's the alternative? She whispered. I end this war myself, completely, decisively. Dante's hands came up to frame her face, his touch achingly gentle despite the violence in his words. I take the fight to Kozlov, dismantle his operation piece by piece until there's nothing left to threaten you. It's riskier, bloodier, but it means you don't have to disappear. It also means you might die trying. I won't. You can't promise that, Dante. You said it yourself, this is war. People die in wars, even the ones who think they're invincible. His thumb brushed across her cheekbone, and the tenderness of it made her throat tight. Then I'll have to be very, very careful, because I have too much to live for now. Emma closed her eyes, overwhelmed by impossible choices. Testify and lose Dante forever, but guarantee her son's safety through federal protection. Or stay, let Dante wage his war and risk everything on his ability to survive. I need time, she said finally. I need to think about this. You have 24 hours. After that, the FBI's offer expires, and we're locked into the alternative. Dante pressed his forehead to hers, his breath warm against her lips. Whatever you choose, Emma, I'll support it, even if it means losing you. The sacrifice implicit in those words broke something in her. This man, this dangerous, complicated man, was willing to let her go if it meant she'd be safe, was willing to endure his own pain if it protected her and her child. How could she not love him for that? The realization struck like lightning. Love. She loved Dante Salvatore, loved his strength and his gentleness, his violence and his protection, the way he'd taken a terrified pregnant maid and given her purpose and safety and something perilously close to happiness. She loved him, and in 24 hours she might have to choose to never see him again. I need to be alone, Emma managed, stepping back from his touch before she completely fell apart. I need to think. Dante let her go, though she could see the effort it cost him. Take all the time you need. I'll be here when you're ready to talk. Marcus escorted her back to her suite, his face carefully neutral. Emma barely noticed the walk, her mind spinning through scenarios and outcomes, weighing the safety of federal protection against the agony of losing Dante. She spent the day in her room, unable to eat, unable to focus on anything except the impossible choice before her. Her son moved inside her, strong kicks that reminded her this wasn't just about her own feelings. She had a responsibility to this child, to give him the safest possible start in life. But what kind of life would it be? Raised in hiding, cut off from everyone who'd come to matter. Evening found her in the East Wing, walking through the spaces she'd transformed. The sitting room with its comfortable furniture and warm lighting. The reading nook where she'd imagined curling up with books on quiet afternoons. The master bedroom that she'd designed without admitting to herself who she'd been designing it for. This could have been a home. Could have been a future. It's beautiful. Emma turned to find Marco standing in the doorway. Not bound this time, not bruised, but wearing clean clothes and looking almost like the man she'd once loved. Almost. Except for the haunted look in his eyes and the way he held himself, defeated, diminished, broken. "What are you doing here?" Emma demanded, instinctively backing away. "How did you—" "Salvatore gave me an hour of supervised freedom. Said I could say goodbye before they transfer me to federal custody tomorrow." Marco took a tentative step into the room. "I know you probably don't want to see me. I know I don't deserve even this much. But I needed to tell you something. If this is an apology, it's not. I mean, I am sorry, Emma. Sorrier than you'll ever know. But that's not why I'm here." He moved to the window, staring out at the grounds. "Salvatore gave me a choice. Testify against the Kozlov syndicate and spend maybe 5 years in minimum security, or keep silent and face federal charges that'll put me away for 20. He said it was my decision. Good. You should face consequences." "I agree." Marco turned to face her. "But he also told me about the choice he's giving you. Witness protection or staying here while he wages war. And I need you to know something, Emma. I need you to understand what kind of man Dante Salvatore really is." Emma's hands curled into fists. "I know what kind of man he is." "No, you don't. Not fully." Marco's laugh was bitter. 3 weeks ago, when his people first caught me in Budapest, I thought I was dead. I thought he'd torture me, kill me, disappear my body. That's what men like him do to people who steal from them. But you know what he did instead?" She didn't answer, just waited. "He asked about you, about the baby, about what kind of father I'd planned to be." Marco's voice cracked. "And when I told him I'd panicked, that I'd run because I was terrified of being a father, terrified of the responsibility, he looked at me with absolute contempt. He said, 'That child deserves better than a coward. That woman deserves better than you.'" Emma's breath caught. "Then he gave me this deal. Testify, serve my time, and when I get out, I'll receive a trust fund. Enough money to start over, build a real life. But there's a condition." Marco met her eyes. "I can never contact you. Can never try to be part of my son's life. Can never interfere with the family Salvatore plans to build with you." The room tilted. "What?" "He's planning to marry you, Emma. To adopt your son. To give you both his name and his protection, permanently." Marco's smile was sad. "I'm a thief and a coward, but I'm not blind. He loves you. Maybe he doesn't say it out loud. Maybe he's too damaged to put it into words. But the way he talks about you, the way he's restructuring his entire empire to make it safer for you and your child, that's love." Emma sank into the nearest chair, her legs unable to support her. "He never said, because he's giving you the choice, freedom or him, safety or risk. He won't influence your decision by confessing feelings he's not sure you share." Marco crossed to her, kneeling so they were at eye level. "But I'm telling you now, as the man who threw away his chance with you, as the father who's choosing to step aside for your son's sake, choose him, Emma. Choose the man who'll protect you both with everything he has. Choose the life he's trying to build for you." Tears streamed down Emma's face. "You're giving up your son. I'm giving him a better father than I could ever be." Marco's own eyes were wet. "Salvatore told me something else. He said if you choose witness protection, he'll make sure I never serve a day in prison. He'll use his connections to bury the charges, set me up with a new identity, let me disappear into a normal life. All because he knows it would hurt you to see me imprisoned, even after everything I've done." "That's insane. That's love." Marco stood, backing toward the door. "I've made a lot of mistakes, Emma. Hurt a lot of people. But I'm not going to make another one by standing in the way of your happiness. Whatever you choose, I hope you find peace. And I hope our son grows up knowing his mother is the strongest person I've ever met." Then he was gone, and Emma was alone with the weight of everything he'd revealed. Dante loved her, planned to marry her, was willing to sacrifice his own happiness to ensure her safety, had shown mercy to the man who'd betrayed them both because it would ease her pain. The choice suddenly became clear. She found Dante in his office, reviewing documents with Marcus. Both men looked up when she entered, and Dante's expression shifted immediately to concern when he saw her tear-stained face. "Emma, I'm not going into witness protection." The words hung in the air. Marcus quietly excused himself, closing the door behind him. Dante stood slowly, his face carefully neutral. "Are you certain?" he asked. "This isn't a decision to make lightly. Your safety will be better served with you than hiding from ghosts for the rest of my life." Emma crossed to him, her heart hammering but her resolve absolute. "I talked to Marco. He told me things about the choices you gave him, about your plans." Dante's jaw tightened. He had no right. He had every right. He's giving up his son Dante. The least he could do was help me understand why. She reached up, framing his face with her hands the way he so often did to her. "Did you mean it? What you told him about marrying me, adopting my son?" For a long moment, Dante was silent. Then his hands came up to cover hers, his eyes searching her face with an intensity that stole her breath. "I meant every word," he said quietly. "But I won't pressure you into something you're not ready for. Marriage, family, a life with me. These are decisions you need to make freely, without the weight of circumstances forcing your hand. What if circumstances aren't forcing my hand? What if I want this?" Emma's voice shook with the enormity of what she was confessing. "What if I've fallen in love with you, and the idea of disappearing into witness protection and never seeing you again feels worse than any danger the Kozlov syndicate could pose?" Dante's breath caught, his eyes widening with something like wonder. "Emma, I love you, Dante Salvatore. I love your strength and your gentleness. I love the way you've protected me without making me feel weak. I love that you're willing to let me go if it means I'm safe, even though it would destroy you." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "And I want to build a life with you, if you'll have me, if you'll have us." The last word broke whatever control Dante had been maintaining. He pulled her into his arms, careful of her belly, holding her like she was something infinitely precious. His face buried in her hair, and she felt him shaking. "I love you," he whispered against her temple. "I've loved you since you threw that champagne bottle. Since you stood in my war room and slapped Marco for betraying you. Since every small moment where you showed me what real courage looks like." He pulled back just enough to meet her eyes. "But Emma, you need to understand what you're choosing. My world is dangerous. The Kozlov syndicate is just the current threat. There will be others. There will always be others. Then we'll face them together." Emma's hands fisted in his shirt. "I'm tired of being alone, Dante. Tired of being afraid. You make me feel strong, safe, like I can handle whatever comes because you'll be beside me." "I will be. Always." His forehead rested against hers. "But I need to end this war first. Need to make sure Kozlov and his organization can never threaten you again. Can you trust me to do that?" "How long will it take?" "A week, maybe 2. His hands cradled her face. "I've been planning this for days. Marcus has assembled our best people. We have the information Marco provided, contacts within the FBI who'll coordinate the takedown. It'll be surgical, decisive, and permanent. And dangerous." "Yes." Emma closed her eyes, terror and love warring in her chest. But when she opened them again, her resolve was steel. "Then do what you need to do. End this. And come back to me. I promise." "You can't promise that." "Watch me." Dante kissed her then, deep and claiming, a promise sealed with breath and heat and desperate need. When they finally broke apart, he pressed something into her hand. A key. "The East Wing," he explained. "It's yours. Ours. When I come back, we'll make it a home. A real one." Emma's fingers closed around the key, the metal warm from his touch. "When you come back, we have a lot to talk about. Like how exactly you plan to propose to a woman who's 7 months pregnant and living under your protection." Despite everything, Dante laughed. "I have some ideas, none of them involving protocol or appropriateness." "Good. I hate protocol." "I know." He kissed her again, softer this time. "Stay safe while I'm gone. Listen to Marcus. Don't do anything reckless. That's rich coming from you. Which is exactly why I know to warn you. He stepped back reluctantly. I need to leave tonight. Every hour I delay gives Kozlov more time to prepare, but I'll call you every day, and Marcus will keep you updated on our progress. Dante, Emma caught his hand. Promise me you'll be careful, that you won't take unnecessary risks. I promise to do everything in my power to come back to you. His thumb brushed across her knuckles. Because I have a family to build, and I've never failed at something I was determined to accomplish. The word family settled into Emma's heart, warm and right, and terrifying in its implications. But she nodded, releasing his hand even though every instinct screamed at her to hold on. Go end this war. I'll be here when you get back. Dante left within the hour. Emma watched from her window as his convoy of vehicles disappeared down the private drive, taking him toward danger and violence, and a confrontation that would either end the threat against them or end him. She pressed a hand to her belly, feeling her son's movements beneath her palm. Your father is a brave man, she whispered. Not the one who ran away. The one who's fighting for us. And when he comes back, we're going to be a family. The baby kicked in response, as if in agreement. The days that followed were the longest of Emma's life. True to his word, Dante called every evening, his voice tired but controlled as he briefed her on their progress. The FBI had raided 3 Kozlov syndicate fronts simultaneously. Assets were being seized. Key players were turning on each other to cut deals. But Alexei Kozlov himself remained at large. He's gone to ground, Dante explained on the 5th night, frustration evident in his tone. We've frozen his accounts, scattered his organization, but the man himself is in the wind. And until we locate him, you're still at risk. Where are you? Emma asked, curled up in the reading nook she'd designed, surrounded by books she couldn't focus on. Safer if you don't know, but I'm careful, Emma, surrounded by my best people. Kozlov won't get to me. That's not what I'm worried about. I'm worried you'll get to him and do something that can't be undone. Silence on the other end of the line. Then, would it bother you if I killed him? The question was asked without judgment, just honest curiosity about her boundaries. Emma considered it carefully. I don't want you to become something you hate, she said finally. I don't want this war to cost you your humanity. But I also understand that sometimes violence is the only answer men like Kozlov understand. She paused. Just promise me you'll only do what's necessary, not what feels satisfying. That's a wise distinction. Dante's voice softened. How are you feeling? How's our son? Our son. Not our son, not Marco's son. Ours. Active. Dr. Reeves says everything looks good. Blood pressure is stable. I've been resting, eating well, following all the rules. Emma smiled despite her worry. Mrs. Chen has been hovering like a mother hen. I asked her to, your precious cargo. I'm a person, not a package. You're a person who's precious to me. There's a difference. She could hear the smile in his voice. I should go. We have intelligence suggesting Kozlov might surface in the next 24 hours. But Emma, I love you. And I'm coming home. I love you too. Be safe. The call ended, and Emma was alone with her thoughts and her fears, and the growing certainty that her life had irrevocably changed. The next call came not from Dante, but from Marcus, and his tone made Emma's blood freeze. Miss Reyes, I need you to listen carefully and stay calm. Mr. Salvatore has located Kozlov. They're meeting tonight to negotiate terms. It's controlled, supervised by federal agents, but things could go wrong. I'm increasing security around the estate as a precaution. Meeting? What kind of meeting? The kind where one side walks away and the other doesn't. Mr. Salvatore is offering Kozlov 2 choices. Surrender to federal custody and testify against his remaining associates, or refuse and face the consequences. Emma's hand pressed against her chest, her heart racing. And if he refuses? Then Mr. Salvatore will ensure he can never threaten you again, permanently. The clinical way Marcus said it couldn't hide the reality. Dante was walking into a confrontation that would end in either Kozlov's arrest or his death. And despite federal supervision, despite careful planning, violence had a way of spiraling beyond anyone's control. When? Emma whispered. 1 hour. The meeting is set for midnight at a neutral location. Mr. Salvatore wanted me to tell you he loves you, and that no matter what happens, you and your son are provided for. He's established trusts, legal protections, everything you'll need. Stop talking like he's going to die. I'm talking like a man who's seen a lot of meetings like this go wrong. Marcus's voice gentled. But I'm also telling you that if anyone can walk away from this, it's Dante Salvatore. He's the most dangerous man I've ever met, Miss Reyes. And he's fighting for you. The call ended, and Emma was left in screaming silence. She couldn't just sit here, couldn't pace her beautiful suite while Dante walked into danger. She needed to do something, anything, even if it was just praying to a universe that had never shown her much mercy before. Instead, she found herself in the East Wing, in the master bedroom she'd designed without admitting who it was for. She lay on the bed, one hand on her belly, and talked to her son. "Your father is fighting for us," she whispered. "The man who'll raise you, who'll teach you to be strong and kind and brave. Not the man who ran away, but the man who's running toward danger to keep us safe." Tears tracked down her temples. "Please let him come home. Please let him survive this. I know I haven't asked for much, but I'm asking now. Let him come back to us." The baby kicked, strong and insistent, as if trying to comfort her. Emma must have fallen asleep, because she woke to dawn light streaming through windows and the sound of vehicles on the gravel drive. She bolted upright, her heart hammering, and ran to the window. 3 SUVs were pulling up to the main entrance. The doors opened, and men in tactical gear emerged, followed by Marcus, and finally, Dante. He was alive. Bloodied, his shirt torn, a bandage visible on his left arm, but alive and walking under his own power. Emma's legs nearly gave out with relief. She ran. Down the hallway, down the stairs, her pregnant body protesting the speed, but adrenaline overriding everything. She burst through the front doors just as Dante was mounting the steps. Their eyes met. Then she was in his arms, and he was holding her like she was oxygen, and he'd been drowning. His face buried in her hair, his body shaking with exhaustion and reaction and relief. "You're alive," Emma sobbed against his chest. "You're alive. You're here. You came back." "I promised you I would." His voice was rough, wrecked. "It's over, Emma. Kozlov is in federal custody. The syndicate is broken. You're safe. Our son is safe." She pulled back just enough to see his face, cataloging the cuts and bruises, the evidence of violence. "What happened?" "He refused the deal, pulled a weapon. Federal agents took him down before he could fire." Dante's hands framed her face. "It's done. The war is over. We won." "We survived," Emma corrected. "That's what matters." "No, what matters is this." Dante slowly, carefully lowered himself to one knee. His tactical team, Marcus, the estate staff who'd gathered, everyone faded into background noise as he reached into his pocket and produced a ring. Not a pawn shop special, not a placeholder, a perfect diamond that caught the morning light and threw prisms across her face. "Emma Reyes, I'm doing this wrong. I'm bleeding, exhausted, probably in shock, and you're 7 months pregnant in your pajamas. This isn't romantic or appropriate or anything close to what you deserve." His gray eyes held hers, intense and unwavering. "But I've learned that life doesn't wait for perfect moments. It gives us the moments we have, and we make them matter. So I'm asking now, in this imperfect moment, will you marry me? Will you let me be a father to your son? Will you build a life with me? Knowing it won't always be safe or easy, but it will always be real." Emma dropped to her knees in front of him, ignoring the gasps from onlookers, and took his face in her hands. "Yes, yes to all of it. To marriage and family and imperfect moments, to building something real with you." Dante's smile was like sunrise, transforming his exhausted, battered face into something beautiful. He slid the ring onto her finger, then kissed her with all the desperate love of a man who'd stared down death and chosen life. Around them, the staff applauded. Marcus was grinning, and somewhere in the growing light, Emma felt the future unfold, messy and complicated and absolutely perfect. When they finally broke apart, Dante helped her to her feet, wincing slightly as his injuries protested. "Hospital," Emma said firmly. "You need medical attention. Later. First I need to hold you, need to feel you breathing, need to remind myself why I fought so hard to come home." So they stood there on the steps of the mansion that would become their home, holding each other as the sun rose on the first day of their future. A future built not on perfection or safety, but on choice and love and the fierce determination to protect what mattered. Emma's son kicked between them, as if celebrating, and for the first time in longer than she could remember, Emma wasn't afraid of what came next. She was ready for it. The ring felt foreign on Emma's finger, catching light as Dr. Reeves stitched the gash on Dante's arm. They'd compromised. Emma had insisted on medical attention. Dante had insisted it happen at the estate rather than a hospital where questions would be asked. So the doctor worked in Dante's private study while Emma sat beside him, refusing to let go of his other hand. 17 stitches, Dr. Reeves announced, snipping the final suture. You're lucky it didn't hit the artery. Another inch to the left and we'd be having a very different conversation. Luck had nothing to do with it, Dante said. I've gotten very good at knowing exactly where people aim. The casual way he discussed near-death experiences should have disturbed Emma. Instead, she found herself squeezing his hand tighter, grateful for whatever skills had kept him alive. Dr. Reeves turned her attention to Emma, producing her familiar blood pressure cuff. Now let's see how all this excitement affected you and the baby. The reading was higher than normal, though not dangerously so. The doctor's expression remained professionally neutral as she conducted the rest of the examination, but Emma could see the concern in her eyes. The baby's fine, Dr. Reeves confirmed. Strong heartbeat, good movement. But Emma, your stress levels are showing physically. You need rest, real rest. No more dramatic proposals at dawn, no more midnight confrontations. She looked pointedly at Dante. Your fiancée is in her 3rd trimester. The next 2 months are critical. She needs peace and stability. She'll have it, Dante promised. The war is over. No more threats, no more danger. Just preparation for our son's arrival. Our son. Emma still felt a flutter in her chest every time he said it. After Dr. Reeves left, they sat in comfortable silence. Dante's head rested against the chair back, exhaustion finally catching up with him now that the adrenaline had faded. Emma studied his profile. The strong jaw, the aristocratic nose, the faint scar above his left eyebrow that she'd never asked about. What are you thinking? He asked without opening his eyes. That I still don't know your middle name. That we're engaged and I've never seen pictures of you as a child. That there's so much about you I don't know. Antonio. Dante Antonio Salvatore. He opened one eye to look at her. And there are no pictures. My mother couldn't afford a camera, and by the time I could, she was gone. The past is just ghosts, Emma. I'd rather focus on the future. The future, she repeated, looking at the ring on her finger. When were you planning to tell me you'd already bought this? The day after you slapped Marco. I saw you standing there in my war room, 6 months pregnant and fierce as hell, defending yourself and your child. And I knew. Dante finally opened both eyes, turning to face her fully. I knew I wanted to marry you, knew I'd do whatever it took to make that possible. So I called my jeweler, described you, and told him to create something worthy of the woman I loved. Emma's throat tightened. You were that certain? I'm always certain when something matters. He reached out, threading his fingers through hers. The question is, are you certain? Because once we do this, once we make it official, there's no going back. You'll be Emma Salvatore. Your son will bear my name. You'll be tied to me and everything I am, everything I've done. I know what I'm choosing, Dante. Do you? Because I need you to understand the full picture. He sat forward, his expression serious. The Kozlov Syndicate is gone, but I still run an empire that exists in gray areas. I've made enemies. I've done things that would horrify you if you knew the details. And while I'm working to legitimize my holdings, to build something our son can inherit without shame, that transformation takes time. Years, probably. Can you live with that? Can you accept being married to a man who's trying to go legitimate but isn't there yet? Emma had thought about this during the long nights of his absence, had wrestled with the morality of loving a criminal, of bringing her son into a world where violence and power were currency. But she'd also seen Dante's mercy with Marco, his protection of her, his genuine desire to build something better. I can live with it, she said quietly, because I've seen who you are when you think no one's watching. I've seen you gentle with Mrs. Chen when she forgets herself and calls you mijo. I've seen you spend an hour on the phone finding a specialist for Marcus's daughter when she got sick. I've seen you trying to be better, Dante, and that's the man I'm choosing to marry. Something in his expression cracked, vulnerability bleeding through the controlled facade. I don't deserve you. Probably not, But you're stuck with me anyway. She leaned in, kissing him softly. Now go to bed. You've been awake for 48 hours, you're injured, and if you collapse from exhaustion, Dr. Reeves will kill us both. Dante smiled against her lips. Bossy. You love it. I really do. They married 3 weeks later in a ceremony that was everything Emma had never known she wanted. Not in a church. Neither of them were religious, and the irony of a criminal seeking blessing in a house of worship wasn't lost on them. Instead, they stood in the East Wing's main sitting room, surrounded by the space Emma had transformed into a home. Mrs. Chen cried quietly in the front row. Marcus served as best man, his usually stoic face suspiciously bright. Dr. Reeves attended, as did a handful of Dante's most trusted associates and the estate staff who'd become Emma's family. Emma wore a simple cream dress that accommodated her 8-month belly, her dark hair loose around her shoulders. No veil, no train, no pretense of traditional perfection. Just her, Dante, and the promises they were making. The officiant was a judge who owed Dante a favor and asked no questions. The ceremony was brief, efficient, and somehow more meaningful for its simplicity. Do you, Dante Antonio Salvatore, take Emma Reyes to be your lawfully wedded wife? I do. His voice was steady, his gray eyes locked on Emma's face like she was the only thing in the world that mattered. And do you, Emma Reyes, take Dante Antonio Salvatore to be your lawfully wedded husband? Emma thought of the maid she'd been 6 months ago. Invisible, alone, terrified of the future. Then she looked at the man before her, dangerous, complicated, absolutely devoted, and felt no hesitation. I do. Then by the power vested in me by the state of New York, I pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss your bride. Dante pulled her close, careful of her belly, and kissed her with a tenderness that stole her breath. Around them, their small gathering applauded, but Emma barely heard it. All that existed was this moment, this man, this choice she'd made to build a future on love instead of fear. When they broke apart, Dante rested his forehead against hers. Hello, Mrs. Salvatore. The name settled into her bones like it had always belonged there. Hello, husband. The reception was equally simple. Champagne and cake in the dining room, toasts from Marcus and Mrs. Chen, laughter and warmth, and the kind of joy Emma had thought was reserved for other people's lives. But here she was, 8 months pregnant and glowing, married to a man who looked at her like she'd hung the moon. As evening fell and guests departed, Dante led her to the master bedroom they'd prepared together. He'd insisted on carrying her over the threshold, despite her protests about her weight and his healing injuries. Dante, put me down, you're going to hurt yourself. I've carried heavier things under worse conditions. Let me have this moment. So she let him, and when he set her gently on the bed, she pulled him down beside her. We need to talk about the adoption, Emma said, her hand resting on her belly, where their son, because he was theirs now, regardless of biology, kicked steadily. I've already started the paperwork. My lawyers say it can be finalized within weeks of his birth. Dante's hand covered hers, feeling the movement beneath their palms. He'll be Matteo Salvatore. No question of legitimacy, no doubt about his place in this family. Matteo, Emma repeated. The name they'd chosen together meant gift, and it felt perfect. He's going to have your last name, your protection, your legacy. But Dante, I want him to know the truth eventually. When he's old enough to understand, I want to tell him about Marco, about how his biological father made terrible choices but gave him up so he could have a better life. Dante was quiet for a moment. You want him to know he was loved enough that even his biological father chose what was best for him over his own wants. Yes. That's compassionate. More than Marco deserves, but you're right. Every child deserves to know their origin story, even if it's complicated. He pressed a kiss to her temple. We'll tell him together, when the time is right. They lay there as darkness fell, talking about the future. About the nursery they'd designed together, the values they'd teach Matteo, the kind of parents they wanted to be. Dante spoke of legitimizing his business completely, of using his resources to help others the way he'd helped Emma. I've been thinking about establishing a foundation, he said, for single mothers, women like you, who are fighting alone, trying to survive while pregnant and abandoned. We could provide housing, job training, childcare assistance. Real support, not just charity. Emma rolled to face him, amazed by the man he was becoming. That's beautiful. It's practical. I have resources. You've shown me what it looks like when someone fights alone. Why not use what I have to make that fight easier for others? He tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. Besides, our son should grow up seeing that power can be used for more than just acquisition and control, that it can actually change lives. He's going to be so loved, Emma whispered. Between the two of us, he won't know what to do with all the love he'll have. He'll take it for granted, the way children should, the way I never could. Dante's expression turned distant. My mother loved me, but she was always exhausted, always struggling. I swore my children would never feel that uncertainty, never wonder if they were a burden. Matteo will never be a burden. He'll be celebrated. Emma's hand found Dante's, squeezing gently. And maybe, eventually, he'll have siblings to share that love with. Dante's eyes widened. You want more children? Someday? When Matteo is older? When life is calmer? Maybe. She smiled at his shocked expression. What? You thought you were getting just one? I thought I was getting you and Matteo, and that was more than I ever expected to deserve. But his hand moved to her belly, protective and possessive. Though the idea of a daughter with your eyes and stubbornness is appealing. A daughter who'd have you wrapped around her finger from day one. Completely. He kissed her softly. I'd give her the world, just like I'm giving you and Matteo the world. 3 weeks later, on a Tuesday morning that started like any other, Emma's water broke. She was in the nursery, arranging tiny clothes in the dresser Dante had assembled with surprising competence when she felt the first contraction. Not painful yet, just a tightening that made her pause. Then the warmth between her legs, the unmistakable gush of fluid, and the sudden certainty that their son was coming. Mrs. Chen, Emma called, remarkably calm despite her racing heart. I need you to find Dante. Now! The household exploded into organized chaos. Mrs. Chen appeared instantly, took one look at the situation, and began issuing orders like a general deploying troops. Marcus materialized to drive them to the private medical facility Dante had arranged, and Dante himself burst into the nursery, his face pale beneath his tan. You're in labor. Very observant. Emma winced through another contraction. We need to go. Right. Yes. The car is ready. Doctor, Reeves is meeting us there. Everything is prepared. He was babbling, this calm, controlled man, absolutely panicking over the imminent arrival of their son. Can you walk? Should I carry you? What do you need? Despite the pain, Emma laughed. I need you to breathe, Dante, and maybe help me down the stairs before my contractions get closer together. The drive to the facility was tense. Emma's contractions intensified, coming faster now, and Dante held her hand with white-knuckled grip. He was terrified, she realized. This dangerous man who'd faced down assassins and criminal syndicates was absolutely terrified of childbirth. Talk to me, Emma gasped between contractions. Distract me. I don't know what to say. Anything. Tell me about your day, your plans. Anything. So Dante talked, his voice steady despite his fear. He described the foundation they'd officially established, the first applications they'd received from women seeking assistance, the building he'd purchased to house the program. He talked about Marcus's daughter recovering from her illness, about Mrs. Chen's granddaughter's upcoming graduation, about ordinary, beautiful things that had nothing to do with pain or danger. And Emma focused on his voice, let it anchor her through the waves of contractions that were growing stronger, closer, more intense. Dr. Reeves met them at the facility, professional and reassuring. Let's have a baby, she said with a smile, and Emma was wheeled into a private birthing suite that looked nothing like a hospital room and everything like a luxury hotel. Labor was brutal. It was hours of pain that blurred together, of breathing through contractions, of Dante's hand in hers and his voice murmuring encouragement. He never left her side, never flinched even when she crushed his fingers hard enough to bruise, never showed anything but absolute devotion. You're doing beautifully, he whispered during a brief respite. So strong. So brave. I'm sweaty and screaming, Emma panted. You're a warrior. You're bringing our son into the world. He kissed her forehead. I'm in awe of you. Then the contractions intensified again, and there was no room for words. just pain and pressure, and Dr. Reeves's calm voice guiding her through. Push, breathe, rest, push again. I can see his head, Dr. Reeves announced. One more big push, Emma, you're almost there. Emma bore down with everything she had, Dante's hand crushing in hers, and felt the impossible pressure and release as their son entered the world. The cry was immediate, strong, indignant at being forced from warmth into light. Dr. Reeves lifted a tiny, perfect human, all scrunched face and flailing limbs, and placed him on Emma's chest. "It's a boy," she announced unnecessarily, and Emma started crying. He was perfect, absolutely perfect. Tiny and red and screaming his displeasure, but perfect nonetheless. Emma's hands came up to cradle him, this life she'd carried for 9 months, this child she'd fought to protect. "Hello, Matteo," she whispered through tears. "Hello, sweet boy. We've been waiting for you." Dante stood frozen beside the bed, staring at the baby with an expression Emma had never seen on his face. Wonder, pure, unguarded wonder. "Would you like to hold your son?" Dr. Reeves asked gently. He nodded, unable to speak, and the doctor showed him how to support Matteo's head as he took the baby from Emma. Dante cradled him like precious glass, this dangerous man holding new life with infinite gentleness. "Hello, Matteo," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "I'm your father, and I promise you from this moment until my last breath, I will protect you, love you, give you everything I never had and more than you'll ever need. You are wanted, you are cherished, you are mine." Emma watched her husband fall in love with their son, watched this transformation happen in real time, and felt her heart expand in ways she hadn't known were possible. Later, after Matteo had been cleaned and measured and declared perfectly healthy, after Emma had been checked and declared recovering well, they were left alone in the quiet suite. Matteo slept in the bassinet beside Emma's bed, occasionally making small sounds that had Dante standing to check on him every few minutes. "He's fine," Emma said, exhausted but unable to stop smiling. "He's just sleeping. I know. I just need to see him, make sure he's real." Dante returned to the chair beside her bed, taking her hand. "Thank you." "For what?" "For him. For choosing me. For building this family with me." He kissed her knuckles. "I spent my whole life thinking I'd be alone, that I didn't deserve anything more than the empire I'd built. Then you threw a champagne bottle at an armed man and changed everything. Best terrible decision I ever made." "Second best. The first was agreeing to marry me." Emma laughed, then winced as the movement pulled at tender areas. "No regrets about any of it." They sat in comfortable silence, watching their son sleep, until exhaustion finally claimed Emma. But even in sleep, she smiled, secure in the knowledge that when she woke, Dante would still be there, watching over them both. The months that followed were a blur of sleepless nights and overwhelming love. Matteo was a good baby, at least that's what everyone told them, though Emma had nothing to compare him to. He ate well, slept in reasonable stretches, and had a particular talent for wrapping his tiny hand around Dante's finger and reducing his fearsome father to absolute mush. Emma had never seen anything more beautiful than watching Dante with their son. He changed diapers without complaint, woke for midnight feedings, paced the nursery for hours when Matteo was fussy. The man who'd killed without hesitation sang lullabies in Italian, his deep voice surprisingly gentle as he rocked their son to sleep. "You're a natural," Emma observed one night, watching from the doorway as Dante settled Matteo in his crib. "I'm terrified every moment that I'll do something wrong," Dante admitted quietly. "Break him somehow." "You won't. You're an amazing father, Dante." He turned to face her, and in the soft glow of the nightlight, he looked younger, softer. "I want to be better. For him. For you. That foundation we started? It's just the beginning. I've been working with my lawyers to legitimize everything. Sell off the gray market holdings, invest in legal enterprises, build something Matteo can be proud of. That's a big change. It's a necessary one. I don't want him growing up ashamed of what I've done. Don't want him to one day understand the full scope of my past and hate me for it." Dante crossed to her, framing her face with his hands. "You and Matteo have given me a reason to be better. I won't waste that gift." Emma kissed him softly. "He's lucky to have you as a father." We both are. The adoption was finalized when Matteo was 3 months old, a judge's signature on official documents, and suddenly Marco Russo was legally erased from Matteo's life. The baby who'd entered the world as the son of a thief and a maid was now Matteo Antonio Salvatore, heir to an empire, and surrounded by more love than most children saw in a lifetime. Emma cried when the judge handed them the final paperwork, not from sadness, but from the overwhelming rightness of it all. This was her family, chose, not born into, built on love instead of obligation. "We should celebrate," Dante said as they left the courthouse, Matteo sleeping peacefully in his carrier. "I just want to go home, be together. That's celebration enough." So they returned to the estate, to the east wing that had become their sanctuary. They put Matteo down for his nap, then curled up together on the couch, exhausted and happy and complete. "I have something for you," Dante said, producing a small box from his pocket. Inside was a pendant, a simple circle of platinum with 3 diamonds, past, present, future. "For Emma Salvatore," he explained, fastening it around her neck. "Who took a chance on a dangerous man and made him want to be better? Who gave him a family when he thought he'd always be alone? Who loved him despite every reason not to?" Emma touched the pendant, feeling its weight settle against her chest. "I love you, Dante Salvatore. You and our son. You're my everything. And you're ours." He kissed her, deep and claiming. "Forever, Emma. That's my promise to you." 2 years later, Emma stood in the main sitting room of the East Wing, surrounded by the life they'd built. Matteo toddled across the floor, chasing after the golden retriever puppy Dante had insisted they needed. The foundation they'd established had helped over 200 women find stability and hope. Dante's empire was 90% legitimate, the remaining gray areas being systematically dismantled and transformed. And Emma was 6 months pregnant with their daughter. "Matteo, gentle with Sadie," she called out, watching their son lavish affection on the puppy. He had Dante's dark hair and gray eyes, but Emma's smile and stubborn streak, the perfect combination of both of them. Dante appeared in the doorway, home from a meeting about opening a new job training center. He took in the scene, their son playing, their dog wagging, their home filled with warmth and laughter, and smiled in a way that still made Emma's heart skip. "How was your day?" he asked, crossing to kiss her. "Perfect. Exhausting, but perfect. Your daughter has been using my ribs as a punching bag." His hand settled on her belly, feeling the movement beneath. "She's going to be a fighter, like her mother. Or her father. Heaven help us if she inherits both our stubborn streaks." But Dante's expression was pure joy. "Have I told you today that I love you?" "Only twice. You're slacking." "Then let me remedy that. I love you, Emma Salvatore. I love the family we've built, the life we're creating, every moment of this beautiful chaos." He kissed her softly. "Thank you for saving me. Thank you for letting me." They stood there watching their son play, feeling their daughter move, surrounded by the home they'd made from nothing. The East Wing had stopped being a project and become a sanctuary filled with photos of Matteo's first smile, his first steps, the life they were documenting for him. The mantle held pictures of their small wedding, of Emma heavily pregnant and glowing, of Dante holding newborn Matteo with wonder on his face. This was what they'd fought for. This peace, this joy, this family forged not through blood alone but through choice and love and fierce determination. "Mama, Dada, look," Matteo called out, the puppy licking his face enthusiastically. They looked, and they laughed, and they were happy. 3 years after a bullet shattered a champagne tower and changed Emma's life forever, she stood in a ballroom. Not the grand ballroom where violence had erupted, but a smaller, warmer space in a community center the Salvatore Foundation had opened. Around her, women who'd been where she once was, alone, pregnant, terrified, celebrated graduations from job training programs, celebrated new apartments, new jobs, new futures. Emma, now director of the foundation, addressed the crowd with Matteo on her hip and her 8-month-old daughter Sofia sleeping in a carrier against Dante's chest. "I know what it's like to feel invisible," she told them, "to work until exhaustion and still wonder if you'll make rent, to be abandoned by someone you trusted and have to face pregnancy alone. But I also know what it's like to be given a chance, to have someone believe you're worth saving, worth investing in, worth loving. Her eyes found Dante's, and he smiled at her with pride and devotion. "You are all worth saving," Emma continued, "worth investing in, worth loving, and this foundation exists to prove that to you every single day, not through charity, but through opportunity, through believing you can build the futures you deserve." The applause was thunderous. Emma stepped down from the podium, and Dante was there, always there, with Sophia stirring awake and Matteo reaching for his mother. "Proud of you," Dante murmured, kissing her temple. "Couldn't do it without you. We're partners in everything." They left the event as a family, loading sleepy children into car seats, discussing dinner plans and bedtime routines. Ordinary conversations about an extraordinary life built from the ashes of chaos and violence. That night, after the children were asleep and the house was quiet, Emma and Dante stood on the balcony of their bedroom, looking out over the grounds. "Do you ever miss it?" Emma asked. "The danger? The adrenaline?" "Sometimes," Dante admitted. "But then Matteo asks me to read him a story, or Sophia smiles at me, or I watch you change someone's life through the foundation, and I remember what I traded that danger for. There's no comparison." "No regrets?" "Only one." He turned to face her. "That it took so long to find you. That we wasted years we could have spent together. We found each other when we were ready, when we needed each other most." Emma laced her fingers through his. "And now we have the rest of our lives." "The rest of our lives," Dante repeated, pulling her close. "With you, Emma, that feels like a gift I'll never deserve, but will spend every day trying to earn." She tilted her face up for his kiss, and in that moment, everything was perfect. Not the sanitized fantasy version of perfect, but the real, messy, beautiful perfect of lives fully lived and loves fully chosen. The maid who'd been invisible had become the heart of a family. The criminal who'd known only violence had learned gentleness. And together, they'd built something neither could have imagined alone, a home filled with laughter and love, a legacy built on second chances, a future bright with possibility. Their story had started with gunfire and fear. It ended with hope and joy and the unshakable certainty that sometimes the most beautiful things in life come from the most unexpected places. Emma Salvatore, formerly Reyes, formerly invisible, stood on her balcony with her husband and her sleeping children and her hard-won happiness, and knew she was exactly where she was meant to be. Finally, completely, irrevocably home.